Welcome to the Washdown podcast, episode number 86. And tonight's guest is Clay County Sheriff Will Akin. Now, Will has a lot of experience. He was in the military, in the Army, went from enlisted to warrant officer, chief warrant officer, was a police advisor in Afghanistan, and is now the sheriff of Clay County, Missouri. We had a great conversation, learned a lot of stuff. Like I said, we had a great time making this episode, and I hope everybody learns something from it and enjoys listening to it as much as we enjoyed making it. So without further ado, here is episode 86 of the Washdown podcast with Clay County Sheriff Will Akin.
So with all that being said, the people who do the job here in our area are freaking awesome people.
Yeah.
They can't control what their boss are doing in DC.
Yeah. Well, that goes back to the conversation we were having earlier about politics.
Yeah.
And how it gets very convoluted and people have knee-jerk reactions about stuff. And yeah.
Yeah.
I don't, do you want to go down that rabbit hole?
I'm not as bad as me, though. I'm not I don't have every politician on speed dial. They're like, oh God, it's James again. I've got a neighbor that I love her to death. I do. Actually, I don't really actually. And she's got codes enforcement and just the CIOs and everybody on speed dial, and they're out there I swear to God, once a week. And I think I have a safe neighborhood because of it, because it's regularly patrolled by the cars coming to and from her house.
And I tell you, man, they might be a drag on public safety, but at the same time, that's the neighbor I want in my neighborhood.
Yeah, she watches shit. She catches more stuff than my Ring camera does. So I'm like, okay. Did you guys see that snake in the street 5 blocks down? No, I didn't. Well, I did, and I called. Okay, thank you.
That's just a concerned citizen.
That's right.
The one that calls in the odor of smoke at 2 a.m.
It's true.
It's November.
Yeah. Might be a fireplace. I don't know.
We've had that at work, though. She's like, it just smells. Do you know what a house fire smells like? Yeah. It just smells like a house fire. Okay. Well, sure shit. We drove because it did. And a half hour later, we was with Shane, and he's like, it does. And I'm like, it's the whole area is just smoky as hell. Finally, it had burned enough that it started showing, and we're like, oh shit, man. We passed this house 5 times.
Yeah. I had one of those at 4:30 in the morning while I was floating. Got odor of smoke in the area, and we're driving around, and my driver slams on the brakes. He goes, that house is on fire. And I'm like, oh, it is.
Man.
Send everybody.
That reminds me of when I first got into law enforcement. We had a shots fired call. I started with Phoenix PD out in Arizona. And the call came in. It was something like shots fired in the neighborhood. We saw people running. My partner and I, we show up. We're shining lights because it's still 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. Still dark. We don't see anything. We don't see anybody. Nobody comes out to us. And so we leave. And then about an hour later, a dead body call comes out. On the same street where the shots fired were called. Totally didn't see this dude on the front yard in the grass laying. I mean, it's not like you could miss him. He had a white T-shirt on. I mean, it was like... I was like, oh my gosh.
Oh, wow.
That was one of those fail stories.
Yeah. So detective wasn't in your future.
No.
Well, with that being said, Will, thanks for coming on the show. We appreciate it. Why don't you let everybody know who you are and what you do, and give us a little bit of your background? Born and raised, that kind of stuff.
Oh man, you want to go that far?
A little foundation.
If it takes too long, we'll just start playing the "See You Off" music.
Yeah, there you go. And then I'll just be like, okay, where'd you guys go?
It'll just be him sitting here on the camera,
staring into the TV. Oh, okay. So originally from Southern California, born in Orange County, and I start all the way back there because I've moved 38 times in 46 years, lived in 10 states and 3 countries. Growing up wasn't an easy childhood. I mean, my dad left when I was 3, single mom with 2 boys. My brother has a learning disability, a cognitive disability, so it wasn't easy to, 1, live with him, but 2, to be the mom of that kid. I say that with full love because he works for me now, and I'll get to that in a little bit. But yeah, we moved around a lot. Ended up being homeless when I was 8 years old, and for 2 years we lived in our car. But oddly enough, I didn't think we were homeless. It wasn't until I attended the FBI National Academy where one of our professors said, "I want you to write a story about you and why, or the things that happened in your life. How did that impact who you are today?" And so I wrote my paper out, and we had to do a presentation, and he looks at me and he goes, "You were homeless." And I was like, "No, I wasn't." He's like, "Did you have a house?" Oh. So for years, I didn't even think I was homeless. And the reason for it is because, one, every morning before school, we ate at McDonald's. Like, that wasn't hardship, right? My brother and I, we slept in our station wagon while my mom was working overnights. And then she would get off work, she would take us to school, and then she would park the car next to the school and she would sleep. But for breakfast, we always ate McDonald's. Now, I'll tell you, for probably 32 years, I blocked out the rest of that day until one of the news networks did a story on my brother and I. And my brother was talking about, the things that I completely blocked out of my memory. Because I remember breakfast, lunch, sometimes at schools. What about dinner?
Yeah.
I don't
what
ever
about
remember
the weekends?
Yeah, I don't ever remember that. Well, it's because my brother and I would climb into garbage cans behind grocery stores and dig in the garbage can for food. I completely blocked that out of my memory. And it wasn't until my brother brought it up where it just like came crashing down on me. And I was just like, holy crap. It's like, I can't remember. I can't believe that I forgot or stored it away, whatever you want to call it. 2 years of my life dumpster diving for food. So when when people talk about hardship, it's like, really? Like, you didn't get the brand new Mustang because...
Yeah.
So dropped out of school when I was 16 years old. I was working 3 jobs to help support my mom and my brother. We were at the time living in Bakersfield, California. And it wasn't until an acquaintance of mine ran around together in the same friend group, but he shot a guy to steal his motorcycle. And at that moment, I was just like, what the hell am I doing? Like, I'm not doing anything except working, busting my ass. And where am I going? I'm going nowhere. And soon to be going nowhere real fast, ended up in jail. So I made the hard decision to join the military. And so I went to the recruiter's office and I was like, "Hey, I'm out." I was like, "I want to go to basic training tomorrow." And he was like, "Oh, okay." He's like, "Right on. I got a spot for you."
Not a hard sell.
So he started telling me like everything that he needed from me. And when he got to the high school diploma part, I was like, I said, "I dropped out of high school." And he goes, "Well, I can't take you." He goes, "We literally just stopped taking last month high school dropouts." And I was like, "So how do I go into the Army?" And he goes, "Well, you're going to have to get your GED." I was like, oh my, I hated school. Man, I hated school with a passion. But I gathered up my thoughts, all my energy, and I went and got my GED and joined the Army. So joined the Army, let's see, what was it, 1994, spent 8.5 years in the Army. I went in as a parachute rigger, so I wasn't infantry. God love my fellow infantrymen brethren, but I wanted to do something more, right? And when the recruiter was telling me, because I scored high enough on the ASVAB that I could pick pretty much whatever I wanted to do. And I was like, I don't care what I do, I just want to be airborne. And he was like, "Man," he goes, "what about airborne artillery?" And I was like, "Ooh, that sounds cool," until he showed me the video and I was like, "Yeah, I don't think so."
I don't even know what that is, but it sounds terrible.
Oh man. I love those guys too, but being a cannon cocker, I wanted to do something else.
Yeah.
So he showed me the video of being a parachute rigger. And I was like, that's what I want to do. Pack parachutes and jump every day. So did that. Got about 100 jumps under my belt. I was a jump master. I was a pathfinder, Canadian parachutist. Skydived. Anything that had to do with airborne, I was involved in it. So that was really cool. While I was at my first duty station, I got my my associate's degree. And the reason for that motivation is because there were 9 of us that went there from basic training, AIT, Advanced Individual Training, where we learned how to pack parachutes. And they were all talking about how they're going to get promoted and they were going to fast track and they were going to do all this cool stuff. And I was like, yeah, me too. And then they started talking about the schools that they signed up for to get the college education. And I was like, what? I was like, I got to go back to school to get promoted? Shit.
And that's how they reel you in.
So I was like, all right. So, I went to a few different colleges and finally ended up with my associate's degree in behavioral science. Because I thought I wanted to be a psychologist when I grew up, but military was way more important than going to school that much. And so then I was about 22. Yeah, I was about 22 years old. Jumping so many times. I mean, my body felt broken. I mean, when you think about jumping from a high-performance aircraft, now the parachutes are different today than they were back in my day.
Yeah.
But
we've already started the back in my day.
Yeah.
Back at Benning.
We just tied two bed sheets together and just jumped. Oh no! I've heard a lot of stories about the Army parachutes from back in the day.
But if you think, so back then, I don't know what the falling rate is or the descent rate is now, but every time you jumped, landing was like jumping off of a 2-story building. 21 feet per second. Right. So, I mean, you're literally jumping off of a 2-story house every time you jump, or the landing anyway. Yeah. So my joints, everything hurt. And so I was like, I'm out of here. Plus my bosses at the time, they were a bunch of assholes. And I was just like, I don't want to deal with this stuff anymore.
Take this job and shove it.
But I couldn't because I was stuck, right? I have an obligation. So I put my flight packet in and finally got accepted to go to flight school. And I ended up being a Blackhawk helicopter pilot. Yeah, so that was freaking cool. Did a lot of air assault type training, fought fires, believe it or not. Actually, I fought the fires that we started. But they were in Korea, and the craziest part about, flying with a Bambi bucket was the fact that you had other aircraft with pilots who couldn't speak English in your airspace.
I don't see how that could ever go wrong or not be just on point all the time.
Oh, man. But you know who started the fires?
Artillery guys.
Yeah, the cannon cockers.
Yep, that tracks.
Oh, man. So then when I was 26 years old, they diagnosed me with adult onset asthma. They permanently grounded me and told me to find a new job.
What?
Man, my world come crashing down on me. And it was all over, hypothetical scenarios, because when they told me what could happen to the lungs and the alveoli and popping and doing all that stuff, I was like, that sounds scary. Yeah. Like, I don't want to do that, because you go from being a pilot to a passenger real quick, right? Yeah. And I said, well, how, like, where's this happened at? Like, what's the research like this? Oh, it's never actually happened.
But it could.
I about lost my shit. So I had to have a job, right? I had 2 small boys, married at the time, and what was I going to do? Like, I only wanted to be in the military. And so finally I was like, I got to find a job somewhere. And the most easiest transition for me, and probably for most military members, is law enforcement. But I was like, man, I'm going to be a cop. Look, in the neighborhoods that I grew up in, we weren't nice to cops. They weren't nice to us. When they showed up, you ran, whether you were doing something right or wrong. You just didn't talk with them, right? So here I am looking for a cop job, North Carolina and Arizona. Arizona was the first to pick me up, so I ended up working for the Phoenix Police Department. Amazing experience. And I tell you, almost 20 years in law enforcement now, I am so glad it happened that way. Spent 5 years with the Phoenix Police Department. Life happened, got divorced, followed my kids to Indiana, where I was a cop in South Bend, Indiana for a year. Oh, man.
Yeah, Notre Dame.
Yeah. And I think that's probably another session. But I tell you, South Bend, I've got a lot of friends that are still over in that area. But that was like taking a step back in time. They literally were dropping the N-word in briefing. Like it was just a regular part of their vocabulary. And growing up in California, Southern California, being around the world a couple times, I'm like, what the hell's going on here? Like, this isn't real life. This is like a movie. So I quickly found a much better place to go to and finally got the job and ended up in Afghanistan for the next 3 years.
Wow.
I could not wait to get out of South Bend, man. Even if it meant going to Afghanistan.
Oh, well, that's a transition.
Yeah,
I
it
mean,
was. Man, spent 3 years in Afghanistan as a police advisor, contractor. First year, pretty much worked with police chiefs, trying to help them understand what being a police officer was and what it meant, but still trying to keep the Afghan values in place and their culture and stuff like that, which, in all honesty, that was a freaking waste of time because the police chiefs were nothing more than warlords for their districts. We knew that.
Yeah, well, whenever you go in and try to change a culture 100% on a 180, I mean, you're not going to succeed.
No. And that's why I always approached it with keeping in mind the Afghani culture, but then trying to make it better for the people. Even though that was a waste of time, my second assignment was with the Family Response Unit. I got to work with Afghan investigators working crimes against women and children, gender rights violations, and human rights violations. Freaking amazing job. I absolutely loved my time working with them because they were educated. Many of them could speak English, and they were in their positions because that's where their heart was. They loved their country. They loved their people so much. So they actually put effort into it. I remember one Afghan investigator telling me, "Why didn't you guys just drop the bomb?" And jokingly, I said, "Well, we dropped a lot of bombs on you, you know?"
Wow. So the sense of humor transcends
yes, it does. Yeah.
nationalities.
And after we chuckled a little bit, he goes, "No, the big bomb." And I was like, "Oh, you mean the nuclear bomb?" And he goes, "Yes." And I was like, "Ooh." I was like, that I hope to God never happens ever again, anywhere, in any kind of war or anything. And we started talking about that. And he literally thought it through. He was like, "No, you should have gave everyone 30 days notice and just have people leave. And whoever was left behind, you just turn them to glass." And I was just like, man. So, the reason why I bring that up is because they loved their country. They wanted a positive change. And if you look at Afghanistan back in the 70s, dude, it was a lot like how America was. Mm-hmm. It was very westernized. But then everything happened, and now it is what it is, right?
Yeah, because it used to be a big vacation spot for a lot of Europeans.
Still is, believe it or not. Yeah. So in my first contract, we're going out off into the mountains, which, man, I tell you what, I've mountain biked for 25 years, and I wish I had my mountain bike with me out there. Minus the mines, right?
Yeah. I've heard other people talk about that, how it just, would be the best ski resorts in the world.
Absolutely. But I remember driving out to this, they called it a hotel. I didn't understand what it was when we were going out, but it was the vacation destination. And how I found out was as we were driving on the dirt road in these mountains, 2 towhead girls holding hands, skipping on the dirt road. And I was like, "What?" Like,
don't you understand? There's a war going on,
man. I think they were.
Ma'am.
I have some pertinent information for you.
Well, I think they were from Switzerland or Sweden or something like that, but they were on vacation. And here we are in up armored vehicles, Humvees, all of our gear and everything. And so at that time, as a contractor, I was assigned to military units, going out and doing focused work on the districts, the police departments. Mm-hmm. And when we came upon those, I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is absolutely insane." Like, I couldn't process it. And we just drove by them, and I just said, I think I may even prayed that we didn't find them on the side of the road coming back.
It probably would have been like, "We're here to talk to you about your car's extended warranty." Like, you sons of bitches.
Oh, I've been getting so many of those letters for a Cadillac that I don't own.
Man. So yeah, I lost my train of thought there, but going back to the investigators, great time working with them. After that contract, I was done. No, man, I forgot about this part. So when I said there was nothing off limits, mm-hmm. That stretch of 8 months is off limits.
Copy that.
I tell you, man, it was a great time, but I was done. I had to come back to the States to unwind, get my mind right, because I mean, it got so bad, I literally had to shut my old Facebook page down because all the guys that I was with, I mean, I was watching their lives unfold, and I was just like, I'm dealing with my own demons, and I'm just like, I can't add any more to my plate at this time, and I just shut it all down, you know. So I came back to the States, and I ended up being a security guard at a children's hospital, which was actually really cool. I mean, Nationwide Children's Hospital in Columbus, Ohio, they do a lot of great things for kids who, let's face it, don't ever leave, right? The hospital. They leave in a body bag, but they don't leave the hospital. So they did a lot of great things. But it was a different kind of chaos. It was a different kind of terrorism. It was freaking domestic terrorism. We would literally get threats to blow the hospital up because we had monkeys in the basement. I'm like, man, like these are kids you're talking about. And so I just couldn't process that. But one day, my old boss calls me up and he's like, hey, man, he goes, I need you to come back. And I was like, I don't think so. He's like, no, I'm serious. I need you to come back. And I was like, why? What's going on? He said he transferred to the security unit and he needed somebody that knew the area. And I knew the area. And I knew operations. I knew convoy security. I knew all that stuff. So he was like, I need you back. And I was like, man, do I have to work with Afghans? Because I was still dealing with the friendships that I made that I'll never see them again, you know, so I didn't want to subject myself to that. And he said, no, you don't have to work with Afghans. I was like, well, I got to convince my wife to let me go back over there. And he was like, you do what you need to do. He goes, I'll get everything ready on my side. 3 days later, I come home from work and my wife's like, she looks at me and she goes, you need to go back. I go, back to work? I just worked a 10-hour shift. Like, I don't want to go. I was like, did I piss you off? And she goes, no, you need to go back to Afghanistan. And I was like, do you hate me? Like, did I? What's going on?
I promise I'll put the toilet seat down.
She goes, no. She goes, I see you come home. She goes, and I appreciate everything that you're doing for us, you know, as a family. But I see you come home and I see you as like a beat down dog. She goes, with your background, your experience. She goes, I look at you and I see Paul Blart. The mall cop, right?
She's hitting low.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I'm just like, what? She goes, no. She goes, I don't mean to be mean.
Well, my feelings are hurt, woman.
I like the movie, but that guy's messed up, you know?
You know what, though? I mean, at least she was able to sit down and talk to you about it.
Yeah.
And, I mean, not to say call you out on your bullshit, but recognize that you weren't happy.
Oh, man.
And then being willing to say, hey, you need to go do something else to be happy.
The amount of support that she has given me over the 12 years that we've been together has just been short of miraculous. I mean, because the first 2 years of our relationship was spent 7,000 miles apart. I mean, literally in the 3 years that I was in Afghanistan, I think we calculated it and we only had 4 months together. And she was my biggest cheerleader. And so, you know, after we get back or through the Paul Blart part of that episode, she goes, so you need to figure out a way to go back. And I said, well, interestingly enough, Jason reached out to me and said, I need to
what
go back.
happened was.
And she goes, go. So I think it was not even a month later, man. I was back on a plane.
We told you, like, Jason, it was a hard-fought battle, man, but I got her convinced.
She said only if I get 100% raise, though.
Right. And I tell you, man, being a contractor over there, I would never complain about the money. I mean, it was pretty decent. So I went over there, and my last contract was working as a personnel security transport lead. So I had roughly 45 guys and gals who were on my security team from 7 different countries. You want to talk about diversity and one group not liking the other group because they're no good sons of you know what, and I walked into that and I saw that and I was like, and I'm supposed to put our lives on the line to go out and save people if a quick reaction team needs to be spun up. No, we're going to address this real quick. So I went in, I gave them my expectations and said, I'm not just a new guy from the United States. I know what the hell's going on around here. And they started complaining. I went back, I pulled a couple of people from the group and I said, who's the problem? Both of them from the opposite sides pointed at one guy. I went back in, I said, come with me. You're fired. We didn't fire him. We moved him to another location. But everyone else was like, what just happened? And I told the rest of them, I was like, you know what? We're talking about lives, and not just our lives. We're talking about the lives of the people that we're protecting when we're moving from our compound or any other compound to the airport or to the airfield or to whatever police department, fire department that some ambassador thinks that it's really important for them to go be in, regardless of whether or not it's in Taliban land, but that's our job. And man, I tell you what, about a month later, the whole team was having barbecues together. There was no more nonsense. And I think it's because, man, Will's not going to play games.
Yeah.
So
sometimes you got to put the hammer down.
Play an old game of fuck around and find out.
That's right, man. But you know what? I made sure we played that game right up front.
Yeah.
So then our company went through a RIF process, and a buddy of mine who wanted to stay in Afghanistan was on the RIF, reduction in force. And he came to me and he's like, man, I don't know what I'm going to do. I plan another 2 years here. And I was just like, dude, just take my spot. And he was like, what? And I was like, I'm done. It's 3 years now. Like, I know I'm done. I mean, could I have stayed? Heck yeah. I mean, I was climbing the corporate ladder of the company that we were working with, and I very well might still be with them today, if I wasn't killed, blown up, shot, whatever. So I went back home. And but it was an easier transition. I didn't experience a whole lot from that. Now I think back at the stories and the things that I responded to, I'm like, whoa, I'm so glad I'm here today, man, because that could have went so bad. But the previous sheriff of Clay County was also in country with me, and he's the reason why I'm out here, Paul Vescovo. I don't know if you guys remember Paul. But he said he was going to leave contract early, and he was going to come back to Clay County, Missouri, and run for sheriff, which would have been he was sheriff for 8 years, from 2000 to 2008. Lost to his opponent, which allowed him to go to Afghanistan. We met. He came back, and he said he was going to come back, and he was going to run for sheriff. And if he won, he wanted me to come out with him and work with him. You know what my response was? I got to apologize to the audience, but I want full effect here. I said, fucking Missouri. I was like, no, thanks, man. I'll pass. But I got to tell you, man, out of all the times that I've moved, all the states that I've lived in, the places I've been, moving to Clay County was the best move personally and professionally. I love this place. My wife and we have planted roots, and this is home. And we've been here for almost 10 years. Been with the sheriff's office for 9.5 years. 1.5 years as sheriff. But before I go into that, when I was in Afghanistan, sometimes the threat level was so high that we couldn't leave our compound for like a month at a time. And so one day, after watching my 8th pirated movie, man, we had full access to movies over there months before you guys got to see them. Damn it. I was staring up at the ceiling, and I'm just like, man, what am I doing? I'm wasting my time. I have the GI Bill. I've got all this time. I was like, you know what? I think I'm going to go back to school. And, man, I finished my bachelor's degree in criminal justice. And I was like, finally, but instead of saying I'm done at this point, I was like, man, that was kind of easy.
On to the next.
Yeah. So I went straight into my master's program and got an MBA with a concentration in management. And now I'm done. Like, that was it.
I swear, guys, this is it. I swear.
Yeah.
Don't worry about what I said last time. This time.
This time.
Yeah. So, doctor.
Exactly. So, yeah. So I'm working at the sheriff's office now, but I meet the site director of Mid-America Nazarene University in Olathe. Mm-hmm. We used to have a campus or a site in Liberty, and I wanted to teach. Like I love teaching. I love being an FTO. I love being an instructor. And finally got my way into MNU and started teaching. And I started, listening to, colleagues, not peers, because I wasn't a doctor, right? I was a colleague because, some doctors walk around like this, right?
Right.
So I was like, man, and I would look at some of them and I'm like, how the heck did they do it? I was like, screw that. I bet if they could do it, I could do it. So I pursued a doctoral program, and then 2020 I graduated. Dr. Will Akin, high school dropout to Dr. Will Akin, man. And I gotta admit, man, that was like the ultimate closure for me for education. And I've been able to use
it's
that.
a ultimate closure for just about anybody. Like, that's about it. Doctorate.
Yeah. There's nothing higher than that. I mean, I guess you could go get another doctorate.
No, this time I'm done.
So see you on the podcast next year, Dr. Akin.
Right? Oh, man. I tell you, my wife, she was joking around with me, and she said, so when's law school? And I looked at her, and I was like, ooh. And she goes, don't. I was like, no, I'm just kidding, man. I don't want to do that, all right? I'm done. But then I was like, well, if I could find someone to pay for that. No, I'm done. I love teaching. I've been at Mid-American Nazarene for, I think, 8 years now, and has loved every single class. So, but now, I mean, especially being in law enforcement, everyone says, oh, you got to have an education. You got to have an education to get promoted and stuff like that. And I tell my people, I'm like,
I'm just going to run for my promotion. Suckers.
Loophole.
Yeah. But I tell them, I'm like, you don't have to be, excuse me, you don't have to have a bachelor's degree to be a commander. But what a bachelor's degree does for you is it opens up doors of opportunity. And like in our organization, much like many organizations that are like size, there are not a whole lot of opportunities to be a commander. And a lot of times somebody either has to retire or what? Die, right? Before that position becomes open. And so what I want to do with my commanders, actually everyone, is I encourage them to get an education, go and get that bachelor's degree, because even though it's not going to get you more pay, because we just don't operate that way, but what it does is it allows a door to be open for me to say, there's the door. I will give you the time. I will give you the resources to go and finish your command college, to go to the FBI National Academy, to do, things that would require a bachelor's degree, when everyone else who decides, oh man, I'm not going to go to school. Well, those doors of opportunity aren't going to open for you.
Yeah.
So that's how I pitch it to my all my employees.
Yeah. Well, and too, for me, I did the traditional college right out of high school. I had a football scholarship. To this day, truthfully, a lot of the education I got is mostly irrelevant for what I do, but the social experiences and just the life experience with a university that came with it's irreplaceable.
Right.
Just the people skills, let alone, for our line of work is critical. And just learning how to talk to different people of different races, different religions, backgrounds, whatever it is huge.
I've met a lot of people who are from Liberty, who are born in Liberty, who grew up in Liberty, went to school in Liberty, and man, their sphere of influence, right? The bubble that they operate in is about this big. Oh man.
Yeah.
And you know what? I love this is home, right? Liberty is home. Clay County is home. But there's something to be said about having those experiences outside or away from home, especially in a bigger university. Let's just say Missouri State, right? K-State, KU. I'm not throwing, sports politics or anything like that in there, but hey, whatever, wherever you go.
I grew up in Louisiana, so we can bash on all of
There
the
you
Big
go.
12, and I'll just be happy.
But there's something to be said about the experience that you get, because there are all walks of life there. You're not going to get that in Liberty, especially when you've grown up with people and that's all you've ever known. You know, and I tell you, being around the world, even more so, because when I talk about our justice system, right? Because in my class at MNU, I talk about, or I ask my students, what is your perception of the criminal justice system? And I mean, just imagine the spectrum, right? And so I tell them, I'm like, hey, that's great. I mean, because I want everyone to think about what the different perceptions are. Now, in full disclosure, I tell them I think it's in dire need of reformation, right? But as much reformation that's needed in our criminal justice system, it's still the best system in the world. And I give them examples of when women go to prison in Afghanistan, their kids go with them. Afghan prisons don't feed their prisoners. So if you don't have NGOs, nonprofit organizations, family bringing you food, guess what? You don't eat that day. Are you kidding me? Can you imagine? So
Yeah, that's
real quick.
yeah.
So I mean, we have a whole lot of first world problems in the United States, man.
Well, and a lot of spoiled people who don't realize they're first world problems.
And get a lot of their information on social media.
What?
Oh, come on. TikTok is the best source of information.
Bro,
I mean,
I
believe everything that I see on social media.
I learned how to do a lot of things on TikTok, though. I do. There's a lot of things I learned on there. Cooking, knots, you name it.
Dude, donut hamburgers.
Donut hamburgers. Typical cop, but
Yeah.
Gotta have donuts, man.
yeah. So let me change gears on you for a second.
Right.
How do you combat those first world problems? We realize where we are in the country towards law enforcement, law and order, the criminal justice system. While, to us it is first world problems, to other people it's their only problem. It's whatever their agenda they've been force fed to believe is. You are combating everything from social media to agendas to protests, whatever it may be. How do you, as a leader, get that? Like, Clay County is a lot better than others. You have a very good base up here that does respect law and order because there are a lot of officers in our city that live up here. Mm-hmm. How do you, as a leader, we always say, I laugh because people are like, well, cops need trained better. I'm like, well, it's the damn public that needs trained better sometimes. How do you train the public? How do you influence the public? Not necessarily to your agenda, but just the reality of situations.
And you hit the nail on the head. It's the reality of the situation. So before I give the answer or my answer, right, we have to be able to recognize that problems of the heart are different than problems of the mind. Right. And what I mean by that is you're not going to change the hate that somebody has in their heart. But if they don't understand what's happening, then that's a problem of the mind. And that's where education comes in. Right. So when I took over as sheriff, I created our vision statement, and that is bringing sheriff's office and community together through integrity and transparency. Transparency is the key word there because, man, in 2020 during the elections, everyone was saying transparency. We need more transparency. And I was sitting back going, for what? Like, how are you going to do that?
You may not want that.
Right. Yeah. And that's another thing, right? So do you really want to know what we do in Afghanistan? Right. I mean, we were there to help the people. And I feel wholeheartedly that most of us over there did a good job, boots on ground. But here, to the transparency, I went one step further with that. I said, yeah, we have to be transparent, but this is how I'm going to do it. I'm going to open the sheriff's office to everyone, no matter what your opinion is, if you want to have a valid conversation about the operations that we have here. Now, if it involves investigations, I'm not going to tell you anything about our investigation because that then would violate the integrity of that violation or investigation. And when it comes to an investigation, it's about the victim, right? I mean, I don't care who you are. If you've been victimized, we need to make sure that we work that investigation to the fullest extent. But if you want to do a ride-along, if you want to come and see the administration part of our office, where my office is at, come on, man, I will give you a tour. That's why we also have Citizens Academies, twice a year. And now they've gotten so popular, people want to be a part of that, that we have a waiting list now. But here's the problem. I would love to have 3 or 4 Citizens Academies throughout the year, but we don't have the staffing, super staff intensive, because I want to make sure that they get the full picture in the short amount of time as possible. And I tell you, man, it's gotten it's become something more than I could have ever imagined because, we have the Citizens Academies, but now the graduates of our Citizens Academies have taken it upon themselves to create a 501c3. And it's the Clay County Sheriff's Office Citizens Academy Alumni Association. It's a mouthful, but man, I tell you what.
You guys have like a homecoming too? And
There's a Facebook group.
Yeah.
And I think there's a Twitter page on it. But you know what? They're citizens of nonpartisan, right? It's a nonpartisan group. We don't care what your partisanship is. But they are citizens who love their county, who love their sheriff's office, who took the step to become more informed for themselves, getting that education piece. And now they're well informed. And the only thing I ever ask for people who ever ask me, what can I do more for the sheriff's office? I just said, man, be our voice. When you see people ganging up on us on Facebook and Twitter, get on there and say, you have no idea what the hell you're talking about. You probably don't even live in Clay County, right? And over the years, I mean, not just since I've been sheriff. I mean, that was something that I was striving for long before I became sheriff, but I just have a little more authority and influence on how things happen, right? But we have an association now, and they have the ability to raise money that's outside of my control, that they decide how it's spent for the sheriff's office.
That's about as transparent people choice as you can get.
Yeah.
Like, hey.
Well, and that's having involved citizens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, ultimately, that's what we want as police officers, firefighters, and all that stuff. You know, we want our community support, and we want them to be involved, you know, and invested in their own security and safety.
We work for the people.
That's right, man. But if the people don't work for themselves, how can anyone expect fire, EMS, law enforcement to deal with everything that is out there? That's why talking about the neighbors who are constantly calling their CIOs and, you know, police or fire, you know, I'm glad they're out there because at least we have them, right? But I think it's also a responsibility for public safety in general to do more with the public. I mean, it's not just I'm a cop and that's all I'm going to do. Man, it's grown. I mean, it's demanding more. And I feel strongly that if we get the public involved, the community involved, our jobs will be far easier.
Yeah. Well, and that goes a lot because we've talked about that before, the whole education piece of, you know, we'll complain about the 2 a.m. toe pain or the go changing batteries in the smoke detector or whatever. And, you know, I've done that. I've complained about that. It's like, you know, I show up at somebody's house who is obviously a 20 to 30-year-old guy who is fit and like not incapable of changing a battery. And he wants us to change smoke detector battery. And I'm like, you don't know how to do this? But
They don't?
they don't.
Well, then you throw generational characteristics in, right?
Yeah, I'm popular. I'm very fond of doing that. And probably I'm a little bit,
You may not know how to change the
biased.
battery in your smoke detector, but come over here. Let me show you how to do it.
Yeah.
You know, and you in just doing that, you're providing a service.
exactly.
Right? So yeah, I think to answer your question, it's the education piece, right? The transparency of it. But it's not just, hey, come to me, man. I don't know if the screen will see this, but let me show you what my calendar looks like.
Yeah, that's full.
Man, let's see. It's just a bunch of
Yeah.
colors, right? Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's how busy I am because I don't wait for people to come to me. I go to them. Whenever somebody says, hey, Sheriff, I know it's just 5 of us, but we really want information on this. Even though I have someone who could probably very easily go and do it, I go and do it myself. And they're like, oh my gosh, the sheriff actually took time to come out here. It's because everyone's important to me, you know? Now, if I wasn't available, then of course I'd get one of my staff members to go out there and do whatever was needed. But I think it's important for me to go out to the community as well. Not just for them to come to me.
Well, and something that I hear resound when you say that is the fact that I think a lot of times we've complained about, you know, management or sometimes us and other people have complained, but the responsibility does not decrease the higher you go. It increases exponentially. And
You took the words right out of my mouth.
And, you know, sometimes people forget that it's, I've arrived here. I've worked hard to get here. Great, thank you. You know, and yes, all of your experience and does accumulate to that point, but your responsibility level just is huge at that point. And you do have to do more. It's different. You're not necessarily boots on the ground in the car patrolling, responding to, you know, Karen complaining about whatever, but you know, you've got to talk to those 5 people. That's the one thing sometimes we forget, like, oh man, I hate running this 2 a.m. toe pain. But thank God I don't have to go to Karen's book club in the HOA and listen to them complain about, you know what I mean? Like, that's shit that we sometimes a little.
Hey, everybody's got their problems. Don't diminish our 2 a.m. toe pain, okay? He gets to go have cookies with Karen. We got to climb up 4 flights of stairs because the elevator doesn't work. I mean, he's not dealing with that.
Right. Yeah. It's all perspective.
Exactly. It's perspective. But no, James, you're 100% right. The higher that you get in an organization or, get promoted and all that stuff, your responsibility increases, and the more people that you're responsible for,
Oh, man.
I mean,
and two, I truly don't know, and this isn't to kiss your own ass because cops are stupid and firefighters are better, but I truly don't know, because on top of that, you're adding he is the top leader in your department. Mm-hmm. So there's all the responsibility of that role as it is.
Yeah.
Plus he's a politician.
Yeah.
And not like the slimy, grimy kind, but just at the end of the day, like we talked about a little off camera, like there are the responsibilities of a politician that come with that.
Yeah.
And you are only as effective as you can be if you are elected in your office.
Yep. And I tell you, the hardest part about my job is not being a cop. Being a cop, I mean, that's been the same as it ever has been in the 19 plus almost 20 years that I've been in law enforcement. The hardest part about my job today is making sure that the people who are actually doing the job have what they need, have the support that they need in order to do the job to meet the expectations that I set on them, right? And really, it's not me just magically coming up with expectations. I have my expectations, but the expectations come from the community, right? We serve the community, and I have 6 guiding values, and the last word is service, right? We know what our mission is. We know what cops are supposed to do: protect and serve our communities and reduce blah, 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 right? Every law enforcement agency has that. I took it one step further by saying our mission statement 20 years ago was a page long, right?
So
written by the previous sheriff.
Easily to remember.
Right.
Yeah.
When I got here, I took that mission statement because I was like, there's no way. Like, I'm a pretty book smart guy, but there's no way I'm going to memorize this because there's a lot of fluff in there. And we all know what our job is. Mm-hmm. So I narrowed it down to like 2 paragraphs, and I took it to the sheriff, the former sheriff, Paul. And I said, hey, man, this is what I want to do. And he was like, oh, what'd you do to my mission statement? I spent a lot of time working on that. I was like, but it's too long. Nobody cares about it. Nobody cares to take the time to read past like the 3rd sentence because they know that TLDR, right? Too long, didn't read, man.
The first sentence and the last sentence.
Right.
All right, cool.
Yeah. I'll just fill in the rest.
So, so when I came on, I was like, I actually did away with the 2 paragraphs and I just made it 6 words, right? Not guiding values. This is our mission statement. And it's embrace change, ... create value, ... inspire others, ... with the emphasis on the ellipses, right? Because what I want my employees to do is to do their job, right? Because we know what our job is. We go to the academy, we go to all this training, we get legal updates. But when you're out there doing your job, I want you to take it one step further and embrace change. But how are you embracing change? ... Right? The rest of the story. How are you doing it? It's easy to expect everyone else to do it, but when you own that, when you have accountability for that, it means something different. When I ask my employees to create value in everything that you do, how are you doing it? ... And then when you are doing your job, how are you inspiring others? Right? Because it's not Joe Friday going in, facts, nothing but the facts, No, it's, hey, I know you've got a problem. You're probably dealing with the worst day of your life ever. You've called us. We are here to help. Right? But then it just don't solve the problem. Give them some resources after the fact. Otherwise, what are they going to do? They're going to call you back. Right? So put it back on fire, Teach
a man to fish.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was.
Looks like you need to go to the hospital.
So I did that with our mission statement. And I tell you what, man, when I announced that and saw how our employees were putting it on their signature block, they were drawing it up on their walls in their offices. I mean, just getting creative with it. I was just like, oh my gosh, they get it. And they owned it. And so now everything that we do, it has our mission statement on it. But I took it one step further with guiding values. And the guiding values that I have, they're 6. And it's respect, accountability, courage, honesty, integrity, and service. Right? But the first letter of each of those words spell out another word, and that's Rackus. the medical term for our spine. Right? The backbone of our organization.
I don't know if I want to hit him or
Doctor.
Doctor. Fucking doctors.
I had to show my intelligence somehow.
Oh, I love it.
And the night before, I stayed at a Holiday Inn Express. But, you know, when I did that, it was something that people were like, no shit. Like, that makes sense. I like that. And now when I ask sergeants, lieutenants, whenever I have a command staff meeting, I'm like, hey, what's our mission statement? Wham, they rattle it out. What are our guiding values? Man, they spit it out. I mean, it's really easy to remember, and they own it. So taking all that and applying it to the job that we do has made us who we are.
Well, and we've seen that before we ever met you, right? We had your deputy Bear on the podcast, and so I've known Bear since I was tiny because he's from my home area. Just the things he does with the program that he started at the school and the one you recently did when you biked with him, like everything you guys do that sometimes even the public doesn't see follows that. They are inspiring change. They are doing that and everything, and it's cool to see. I don't know if you necessarily always see it from the high tower, but just the little stuff that they do and the way they portray themselves, even when they're on the podcast, like.
But you say that, and in jest, I tell my commanders, I don't want you to tell me how good we're doing. Right? I don't want you to tell me that Deputy so-and-so is saying this and making us look great, because let's face it, from the deputy or our non-sworn employee to me is several layers, right? And how much filtering has happened, right? And then I just don't want people to come up to me like, oh, Sheriff, you're doing a great job. And I'm like, okay. But when I hear stuff like that, right? When I hear from teachers in the schools, when I hear from the community that we've helped, and they talk about how, they came here and they did their job, but they did it with like through an experience that I've never seen before, because they look like they actually like their job. That's what means the most to me, because that's raw, right? I mean, you're not filtering anything out for me. I mean, why? Other than to cover for Bear.
You owe me $100, bro.
I told him I watched that episode when he was on the show, and he was like, oh, you saw that? And I was like, yeah. I was like, so get your Class A's ready.
Oh, yeah.
Look, I like our Class A's, man. I've always liked getting dressed up. Maybe that's because I didn't have anything to get dressed up in when I was a kid. But from the military all the way in through law enforcement, every chance I get to dress up in my Class A's, man, I take it, because it just makes.
Oh, so
me
we're
feel
not good enough for your Class A here on the podcast?
Man,
cool.
I came
cool.
straight from
That's
a
cool.
budget meeting.
Okay,
You're lucky
cool.
I'm here, because budget meetings are way more important than anything else.
You say that in jest, but not really.
Not really. No, budget meetings are important, and Clay County, for the longest time, has not had a well-functioning environment. But I tell you, man, people are always asking me, "Hey, how's Clay County government doing?" And I'm like, you may believe me or not. Either way is fine with me. But we've got a good thing going now. We've got a professional staff. We've got people who are in office that love doing their job. We talk about elected officials, but I need to be careful how I go down that road. I'm not going to say that no elected official doesn't have an agenda, right?
Yep.
I have an agenda, and that is to get reelected. That's my goal, but only because I feel like as long as I'm the sheriff, we can continue to do great things. Not,
Yeah.
What's the next office am I going to, pursue?
Yeah. You have a vision for the department. You want to see it through.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I 100% get that. So,
Yeah.
So, kind of back to my question earlier, and you've touched on it a little bit. We've talked about educating the public and how we do that. How do you educate your employees? How do you just instill your mottos, especially the whole realm of this podcast comes down to mental health. How do you, as a leader with all that, have the individual employee but still have the organization? Like, what do you do? What are some of the things you do to focus on the individual employee?
Man, that's a great question.
I know. That's why
I know that's why you asked it. Come on, Jeremy, where were you on that one?
Sometimes I just black out, just let him go, and then I wake up and go, man, I got to do some editing.
Yeah. Oh, that's coming out. No, that I like that question. And when I took over as sheriff, one of my let me ask you a question real quick, then I'll finish with my answer.
Typical politician.
I know, right?
With a question.
And then he's going to forget about that question, and then we'll just move on.
Move on. It's called bridging. Oh man. Okay, so what causes the most fear?
Change or unknown.
You hit it. Unknown. It's uncertainty. We don't know, so therefore we start conjuring things up in our minds, right?
Catastrophizing.
And all we're doing is making it so much, worse, disastrous than what it actually is.
Yeah.
So when I talk about transparency with the community, that's also within our own organization. So when I have command staff meetings, my assistant takes notes, and then we blast all those notes out to our employees. So they know what we're talking about.
Holy shit.
That's, sir, I believe you have crossed into the realm of cotton candy rainbow land with your craziness.
Where's the scale?
What you said makes sense, and we don't like it.
Yeah. I'm sorry, we cannot have that.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Other people in charge listening, don't follow that. That's too good. Don't do that.
Yep.
But I do caveat it, so I go through the notes and I make
It's just
sure.
black lines.
Yeah.
This is redacted.
Redacted. The whole thing. Yeah, we give them all notes, but it's just a blank piece of paper.
There's like 10 words on there.
Now it makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
No,
okay.
what I do is I take all the notes and I format a little differently just so I can make sure that I know what I'm sending out to all of our employees, and not just our sworn employees. It goes out to all of our employees. But in the email, I say, this is just a snapshot of what was discussed. So don't take this, in full force. This is what we're going to do. Because let's face it, command staff meetings involve a lot of discussion about sometimes some hard subjects, right? Mm-hmm. And even though I want everyone to know what we're talking about, I don't want them to think that we just made that decision in that room.
Yeah.
That's asinine, really.
Yeah.
I mean, it is. So I blasted out, but you know what? In the beginning, it was like, oh my gosh, he really kept his word. Like, we know what they're talking about. Well, I've done it ever since, right? So every command staff
You forget
meeting,
1 week, and they're like, hey, email. Let's go.
I'm just impressed that everybody checks their email.
Well, not everybody, right? Especially if it's a long one. So, I know I have some people, you guys may do the same thing, but they'll put a long email with a whole bunch of whatever in the beginning, but the important information at the end.
Oh, yeah. I'm not saying that I've seen that, but
The sky is blue, grass is green. Oh, and you're fired.
You got to check your emails. But you know what? Even for our employees that don't check their emails, they're going to hear about it because the rest of the employees that do check their emails, they're talking about it.
Yeah.
And I want them to talk about it. I want them to ask questions to their corporals and their sergeants and their lieutenants and captains, right? Because if we only know what we know, we don't know what we don't know. This year, every quarter, I've met with all of my sergeants. And actually Thursday, we're having a team building session at William Jewell College at the Tucker Leadership Lab. I can't wait. But every time we do that, I try to tell them, I try to explain to them how much value they add to the organization. Look, I'm at the top, I'm making decisions, oftentimes chained to my desk, right? So I don't get to walk around and get that raw information from our employees who are actually doing the job. But who really makes sure that operations continue? It's our sergeants. There are 33 of them. And when I'm not at work, when the captains and lieutenants aren't at work, who's making those decisions? The sergeants. So I make sure that I empower them with the ability to make decisions in our absence. And I tell you what, that's been a culture shift, right? I had a long time serving sergeant. I mean, I think he's been with us for like 23 years, a sergeant for 10 to 15 of those years. And he came to me the other day and he was like, I just like the fact that I know now that if I have to write someone up, I don't have to be in their chain of command. I'm like, come on, man. When I was in the military and I was a sergeant, I didn't care what branch of service you were in. I didn't care what unit where you were in. But if I saw you at the PX and you were acting like an asshole, I'm going to call you out. I'm going to correct that right then and there. I didn't have to be in their chain of command.
Yeah.
And that's what I've expressed to the sergeants. I'm like, you don't have to be in this division or that division to take action to correct something, especially if it's going to make us look bad, right? Go out there and do that. That's what I expect of you.
Leadership at every level. How many times can I say that?
That's a novelty, man.
Yeah, I know. That's, again, cotton candy rainbow land. I should just shut my face.
So educating our employees as well, right? And I do that through our command staff notes. I do that with quarterly meetings with our sergeants, making sure that they get all the information. But I also, like, man, I'm so easily accessible. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, LinkedIn. I mean,
TikTok.
no, not TikTok. Not yet.
Not yet.
Gosh.
Not yet.
I get most of my TikToks off of Insta's Reels. But, I'm so easily accessible. So if you ever have a question, man, send me a direct message, send me an email. I don't care. I'm going to get back to you. It may not be within the next 24 hours, but I always try to get back to people. And sometimes, my phone blows up all the time. Oh my gosh. Even my wife has finally gotten to the point where,
You got a wife phone?
no. So I have my work phone and I have my personal phone, right? Got to keep the two separated. And when she sees me on my work phone, she just doesn't even bother me, right? She knows I'm working. But if I'm not paying attention to her and I'm on this phone, I usually get slapped. It's like, hey, me. But it's because I'm so accessible and I will always try to get back with people. If for whatever reason I get too far behind and I forget to get back with someone, I am the first to apologize, right? It's nothing else. It's just I'm super busy and sometimes I forget, but I always try to get back to people. And that goes for our employees too. Now, with that in mind, you got your 25, 30-year veterans of the Clay County Sheriff's Office who thought, wait. My employee's going to talk directly to the sheriff without me knowing?
Yep.
And that's exactly what I said. Yes.
Yep.
Get right with it.
Yeah.
But man, I tell you, we've got an amazing team. I've had senior employees, tenured employees say, I thought I was going to have to retire early, but I love the direction that we're going now. And I tell you what, man, that's a huge compliment, especially from the old salts.
Yeah. If you can change their mind, then you're doing something right.
Well, especially just with the, sadly, the culture we have with law enforcement today. It is a mass exodus, and it is only the strong survive. And then, only the strong survive. What is strong? What makes an organization strong? And everything you've said tonight is what makes it transparency and leadership and setting that example and communication. That's what makes an organization strong. That's what keeps morale high.
Yeah, because that mass exodus that you're talking about, it's not the old salts that are causing the problems, right? And I'm not saying they're all causing problems, but I'm saying that the longer you've been on the job, the more disgruntledness that you have, the more stuff that you have to complain about. The ones that are leaving are like, man, I've only been on 5-6 years. I'm out. This is not what I thought it was going to be. Things are changing. Societal pressures are at an all-time high. And besides the fact that my mom, my wife, my kids are all telling me, get the hell out, right? Those are the ones that we're losing.
And with the most potential. That's
Absolutely.
That's the future of your organization that you are losing.
You can still mold them.
Yeah. Well, not to mention, who are you going to get to replace them?
The B team.
No, you're going to get the college students right out of college expecting
Yeah.
$100,000 a year because they have a
Exactly.
bachelor's degree in some kind of liberal arts. No. Nobody wants to
I'm
be a cop
entitled.
anymore.
Yeah. First world problems.
Yeah, and I tell you, man, unfortunately, when we do hire people, oftentimes they're from other law enforcement agencies. So we're not getting new people who want to go to the academy or just got out of the academy. It's other police officers, other sheriff's deputies. Adds to that whole vicious cycle thing.
Yeah. It's robbing Peter to pay Paul. So, yeah, so let's go back to the mental health question. And see, I didn't forget.
No, that's another good question, man. No. I like that question.
I forgot.
Okay, well, so on
on mental health, what are you guys doing in your department?
man, I tell you, we
Because that goes into the whole guys who are, that could be a reason 5-6 year guys are saying, hey, this isn't what I thought it's going to be. I can't take this. I'm out.
Yeah.
And, you mentioned, you got those 20, 25 year people who are the salty, crabby, complainy. Why are they salty, crabby, and complainy? Is it because of the stuff they've seen? Is it the 4 divorces they've had? The alcohol problem that they have?
All of the above.
Exactly.
No, man, I tell you, we subject law enforcement, fire, EMS, any kind of services, military members, we subject them to the job, right? Yeah, we expect you to go out there and do your job, but what are we doing to make sure that they're keeping their mind right? I don't need to talk about my problems. I'm just going to I'm going to bottle them up because I'm tough like that. Mm-hmm. And then what ends up happening? Alcohol, drugs, suicide. I mean, guys, I had 2 partners die by suicide. I've watched people take their own lives on social media that I knew from overseas. And it's just like, what are we doing? So what we're doing on mental health and well-being is we have one of the largest peer support groups. I mean, I've lost count on how many people we've got trained. So we have our peer support group. We recently added a social worker to our staff in partnership with Tri-County Mental Health, not just for the community, but for our people too. It's kind of like a, win-win situation because she is with us, right? We brought on Lola. You guys know who Lola is? Man.
Yeah. I don't.
No? Canine Lola?
Well, now I'm interested.
Yeah. So, and you know what? You guys should have her on the show. Her and Kim, her handler. So we brought our canine peer support, our peer support canine. We're the first sheriff's office in the state of Missouri to do it, and only the second law enforcement organization outside of Independence to do it in the state of Missouri. Lola has been spotlighted all the way down to Florida. And I know this because my brother-in-law took a picture of the news that he was watching. He goes, "Is this Clay County, like your Clay County?" I was like, dude, yeah, that's Lola.
Nice.
That was awesome. But see, what we use Lola for is not only for our employees, but we take her to schools, to fire departments, police departments, wherever they need a canine peer support dog and handler, right? Huge. Huge.
Yeah.
Dude, I don't care how shitty my day is. When a dog walks in the room,
Yeah.
it's a different story.
Well,
Lola makes everyone smile. And I tell you what, man, when she goes into schools, like, man, I don't want to let the cat out the bag, but Lola is so successful that we're actually looking at a way to implement a canine peer support dog for our school resource deputies to have in the schools.
That's fantastic.
That's huge.
So when I talk about mental health and well-being, I mean, shoot, I was the law enforcement co-chair on the Tri-Cit, the CIT council for our council for 3 years. I went to my first CIT training back in 2005, went again in 2018 because I was the law enforcement co-chair, but never attended CIT in Missouri. I couldn't even wear our pin. So I went through it again. But you know what? From the 13 years
Things change.
And I learned so much more.
Yep.
So CIT is a huge part of our organization as well. And we try to send all of our employees. Now, we have to wait on classes, space, and stuff like that. But even for the brand new employee, like there's different philosophies. They're like, oh, you shouldn't attend CIT until you're like 2 years on, so you know what the job is like. But I'm like, why do we subject them to 2 years of void, right, non-CIT?
Here, go make these bad habits for a couple of years, and then we're going to teach you how to do it right.
Yeah.
Let's introduce them, and then they can say, oh, you know what, I remember in the class that and then, fill in the blanks.
Yeah, I took that class back in 2006, I think, and it directly helped me on several calls and just how I interacted with, some of the calls that we typically run.
And I tell you, man, it's all about delivery too. When you go to somebody's house who's having the worst day of their life and we walk in and we're like, oh my gosh, really? You called for a toe pain? Mm-hmm. But in their mind, for whatever reason, they're going through a crisis.
Yeah.
And having that level of training, okay, I can go in here and say, you're a dumbass. Take some ibuprofen or whatever you guys tell them and go to sleep. You go in and you deal with it because they're still a person.
Yeah.
There's still a level of dignity that you have to have when you're working with them. So,
And sometimes, like, I don't want to say people are just stupid. They just don't know. Like, we had a guy literally yesterday. I haven't ran a call this funny in a minute. Came in as a couch on fire. And, like, we round the block on the street, and there's a column of smoke, and we're like, oh, shit. We pull up to a fully involved couch in this guy's driveway, and he's just standing right by it, just waving at us as we pull up. And we get out, and we're like, hey. And he's like, are you here to tell me I can't do this? Yeah, bro. Yeah, you can't do this. Oh, I'm sorry. Like, just as nice as can be. We're like, why? He's like, wife told me to get rid of it. And he's like, so I just drug it out here and caught it on fire? I'm like, no. You just can't. Like, what was your plan afterwards of everything that didn't burn? And he's like, it wouldn't all burn? No, do you not see the springs in there? He's like, oh, okay, I'm sorry. Like, it just, deer in headlights. Nicest guy as can be. Super nice. Apologized, shook our hands. Nice as can be. Just not there. Just didn't get it.
yeah.
But, like, again, guess what he's not going to do? Burn a couch again. And we didn't have to yell. We didn't have to scream. We didn't have to. We're just like, hey man, you just can't do this. Okay, cool.
Yeah. Another thing that we're doing for mental health is, I'd say probably the last 6 months, maybe a little bit longer. We've been toying around with the concept of a sabbatical for our employees. Man, when that was first brought to my attention, I was just like, whoa.
Let's pump the brakes on that
Yeah,
one.
I go, look, we are not a private organization. We are a public entity. What funds us is taxpayer dollars. And so they presented it to me through a PowerPoint presentation. And as they were presenting it to me, I was like, man, I like this idea. But I told them, I was like, we're not going to call it a sabbatical, right? Because I don't want to be associated with what the private sector does. But I think, and I told them, I said, you're definitely onto something, because if we don't take care of those 5-6 year employees who are now, like for me, year five was pivotal. Like I started going down the drain, and I tell you, I joke around about South Bend and how bad it was. No, it was more along the lines of, do I put the gun in my mouth or to the side of my head? And that's where I was at. So why do we wait until that happens? Let's have a program where you can actually apply for it, and we encourage it at the, I think it's like the 6 or 7 year mark, to get time off. But it's not just free time. It's not vacation, because the stipulation that I have is the first 40 hours, you have to do some kind of community service, right? I want you to be involved in the community, whether it's, working at Harvesters or Love Inc. or, wherever. Just do something and involve yourself in the community. And then beyond that, go and do something else that's not self-fulfilling, but, what's the word I'm looking for?
Come on, doctor.
I know, right? I've got too much information in my head. I can't recall all of it.
Yeah.
No, something that, if the word comes to me. So basically something that makes them better, right? Don't just go out there and plant your ass on your couch and watch freaking Netflix until you have to come back to work. No, go out there and do something that you actually benefit from.
Yeah.
That
Revitalize yourself,
that
recharge
you can
yourself.
grow. Yeah. And so we've been toying around with that, and we've implemented it. But wouldn't you know, there are employees who are saying, I don't want to do that.
Then don't. Cool.
Right. But they're doing it for the wrong reasons. Right? They're not doing it because they don't believe in it. I want to do that, but I have to work off duty. And a part of the stipulation is if you do the for the lack of a better term, sabbatical, then you turn everything in. You're still a cop, keep your badge and your gun, but you turn your car keys in, you turn your radio in, you turn your vest in, and you don't do anything law enforcement related. Well, we don't pay our people squat. So the ones that rely on the money that they earn from off duty, they don't want to give that up. Well, that's another problem. We don't pay our people enough. It was brought to my attention over the last year and a half. We have employees that have hotel size refrigerators in their homes. They've got kids. Now, can you imagine being a single parent and having 2 kids and a small refrigerator to have whatever they had in there? Barely eggs, right? And some milk. appliances going out and they can't afford to go and do anything. So now they have to hurry up and get off work to go to the laundromat to do clothes, wash their and really, do you want to wash your uniforms in a laundromat? I mean, that now we're talking about safety and security for the employee, right? For other people who are using the laundromat. If I know that guy's a cop and I hate the cops, man, I got him in a laundromat. The whole ambushing and stuff like that we've seen across the country. So I don't want them to have to go into a laundromat to do their clothes. I found out recently that one of our employees had to get rental assistance because he couldn't afford his rent. And it's not because he wasn't a good employee. He just has family issues that he's contending with. They're a single income family.
Life happens.
Yeah.
But you know what? If I was able to pay him a competitive wage, not be high paid, right? I just want to be competitive with all the organizations that are within Clay County and Platte County, and heck, even as far as Jackson County and Buchanan County.
Yeah.
We're not even competitive like that. We're like one of the lowest paid agencies in the metro area.
Yeah. And it's a large metropolitan area. So, I mean, rent's not cheap. Food isn't cheap. Gas
Especially
isn't cheap.
in Clay County.
Yeah.
And you want to talk about mental health, like, you can set aside, it's not ideal, but we can deal with the shit we see at work. Having to go to a laundromat with a tiny fridge and not being able to pay rent to support your family that you love is a different deal.
Yeah, on top of.
And it's because they are a cop.
That's right.
As shitty as that is to say, it's not a fault of yours or anything else. They chose a life of helping others and they can't help themselves. That is a toll on mental health.
And then to add insult to injury, you got people who say, well, if they don't like it, they can stop being a cop. Yeah, you can say that all day long until you call 911 and need a cop, right? And then it's a whole different story.
Yeah. Or we get the guy to replace that guy and he gets a bad shoot, puts the department in jeopardy, sues the department for millions. Like, we can play that game.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
It's almost infuriating. Probably, obviously, as the tax-paying Clay County citizen,
man,
I'm not even the boss.
Yeah. and ultimately, who does it fall on, right?
Yeah.
The taxpayers of Clay County. They expect a certain level of service, but if I can't provide that because of what I'm paying employees, and I've got, 14 vacancies right now, and we're scrounging by having conversations at the budget meeting about how much overtime I'm using, and the question being posed, if you get more people, if we give you the money to increase your salaries and you get more people, is that going to stop overtime? And I was like, no, because I actually need 50 more people.
Yeah.
But I can't even fill the vacancies that I have because of what we're paying our employees. Now, look, I say that and the county understands, like they're trying to do what they can do in order to make that happen. Yeah. So they're great partners. We work with them, but it all adds to the mental health and well-being. But I tell you what, man, I can't control the job and the experiences that we have doing our job, but I will go to the depths of hell to try to make internal operations much better for them, for our employees. I'm going to share something. My wife doesn't know about this podcast yet, but she's going to be like, you said what? So the week leading up to election night for my election, my wife and I got into this blow up fight. Oh my gosh. And it was because of how much time and effort that I was putting into my campaign. And really, what was I sacrificing? I was sacrificing time with my family. I was, sacrificing chores at home and stuff like that. And I just wasn't home. Or when I was at home, I wasn't home.
Yeah.
Because I was on these things.
Mm-hmm.
We got into this big blow up fight and she was like, why are you doing this? Why are you putting so much time and effort into this? You're so marketable.
You don't have to try so hard. People like you already.
But what she was trying to say, and she said this to me before, is why in the world do you want to continue being a cop in today's day and age? And so, she challenges me. I'm already stressed out and I'm ready for a fight as it is.
Listen,
you're 100% right.
Yeah, but I didn't.
I'm not going to tell you.
I will submit after the election. No, but I told her, I was like, I'm not doing it for myself. I'm doing it for the 225 employees that we have at the Clay County Sheriff's Office. because the alternative to me not winning was someone who was running. And I don't want to speak ill will of my opponent, because I would actually consider him a friend. I've known him for years. But the reason why he ran is because it was an item on his bucket list. We need somebody whose heart, mind, soul, body, everything is in it, right? Because this isn't an easy position. For him, it was, well, I just want to check the box.
That'd be cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think whenever you're talking about public safety, police departments, fire departments, EMS, all that, whenever you get to that level of leadership, you have to have that mentality of, I'm there for everybody else and to make my community better. It's not about me.
Right.
I mean, because if you go into it, and we've all seen those politicians that are like that. They're a politician for them. They don't really care about the constituents and all that stuff.
And we see that when they get into office, and then we smack ourselves in the head going, why did I even vote for that person? But then when you really boil it down, it's like, who else did I have to vote for?
Yeah.
The best of the worst, as they say. So yeah, I put my everything into it. And, when I have to make hard decisions, they don't come lightly. And, I stress out about that. I mean, shoot, from election time to July 1st of this year, I weighed the heaviest I've ever weighed, and it was because of the amount of stress that I was under, and I wasn't taking care of myself, which goes back to, if I don't take care of myself, nobody else is going to take care of me, and if I can't do this job, then who's going to do it? So July 1st, man, I started 75 hard, and it's been freaking awesome. I've lost 21 pounds so far in the 7.5 weeks, and I tell you, I'm going to keep doing it.
Nice.
But, that blow-up fight, it wasn't about me. It was about everyone who works for the sheriff's office. And, just to add a little bit more about my opponent, he is a nice guy. And I think the world of him. And it's not because I really know who he is. It's because everyone who knows him all said the same thing about him. He would have given his shirt off his back for someone who needed it. On election day, we were both standing at one of the polling sites doing our thing. But instead of talking with people, we were talking with each other, just shooting the shit, and people were walking by going, like, looking at us like, what?
You're supposed to hate each other. Fight! Kill him! Where's the cage?
One guy even said, he goes, aren't you two running against each other? And we both looked at each other and we started laughing, and we're like, yeah, but we don't have to hate each other.
Exactly.
Oh, man.
I think it's important to note, and I've said it before, and I'm probably going to keep saying it. We've gotten to a point in this country where the ability to agree to disagree is gone. It's either you agree 100% with everything I say, or you're the devil. And that needs to change wholeheartly.
That level of polarization is hurting us more than I think we've ever been hurt before. Mm-hmm. At all levels.
Yeah.
Right? Because if you're on the right side, if you're on the left side, and there's no middle, or worse yet, if you find yourself in the middle, then you end up being a man with no country.
Yeah.
Because you're not going to be accepted because, oh my gosh, you're trying to work with the other side.
Mm-hmm.
That is such a...
We talk about your daily routine, the things you have to do, all the little things that come up that you as a leader have to divert yourself to address, and then the little fires you have to put out on a daily basis. Recently, we've had a massive tragedy in the city with the loss of North Kansas City police officer Daniel Vasquez. A lot of the city saw you on the news. You were kind of the face of that incident, and as far as a public information standpoint goes. What was that like? Because that's not a hey, go put out this little tiny fire. This is, hey, we got a forest fire we have to deal with, and everything else goes on hold. What's that like for you as a leader, and then your officers too? It's a morale killer. How do you even begin to address that?
Man, I tell you, I still don't even know the answer to that question. That day when it happened, I mean, we were all in disbelief. In fact, when the information came out, we heard that North Kansas City Police Department was in an officer-involved shooting came out. Okay, in my mind, I'm thinking that one of the officers got into a shooting, right, and possibly shot someone, being shot. But I was in a meeting with the North Kansas City police chief, and he just ran out. And I was like, whoa. I mean, we were done with our meeting. We were all just kind of doing our thing, networking, and I mean, we were all friends. So we don't always get that time together, right? He runs out, and I look at Platte County Sheriff. I look at a couple other police chiefs. I mean, the Independence police chief was there, and we were like, what's going on? And somebody said, oh, there was an officer involved shooting. And I was like, oh, man, that's crazy. Like, okay, is everyone okay? What's the status? Nobody knew. But they said something about he's on his way to the hospital. Well, automatically, we're all like, okay, we're going to head to the hospital, for just nothing more but just to support, right? So we were like, okay, we're heading over there. And then it went from an officer involved shooting to the officer is being transported. Man, I tell you what, you guys know it, being in fire services, right? EMS, that when a critical incident happens, you don't think outside of what is my job, right? And you just go into action, right? And then you deal with the aftermath after, right? So we go to the hospital, and I'm talking with the assistant city manager for North Kansas City. She's awesome. She was actually one of my mentors for public information. Public information was not in my future when I first got to the sheriff's office, but I was the guy that, we're on a scene and media shows up, automatically do a 180 and walk away. Like, I don't want anything to do with the media. The sheriff's office, though, the person who was our PIO spokesperson retired, and the sheriff asked, who's going to step up and do this? And everyone's like,
yeah,
I don't think so.
Anybody?
Yeah. And then, so I'm sitting there kind of doing the same thing, but I'm looking around the room and I'm going, oh man, I don't want that person doing it. Oh, I don't even want to look at that person. And so I was like, oh, we're not in a good spot. So I volunteered for it, and I learned a tremendous amount. But she was one of my go-to people. And I'm on the phone with her, and she's like, where are you at? I need you here. And I'm like, well, I'm on the way to the hospital to be with the chief and to figure out if there's anything I can do over there. And she goes, no, I need you over here. Media's starting to show up. And I go, are you wanting me to be the lead PIO? And she goes, yes, where are you at? And I'm like, whoa, okay. Like, I had no idea that it was going to rise to that level. But I told her I was going to the hospital regardless because I wanted to see the chief. And I wanted him to make the decision out of respect because of what just happened.
Yeah.
Well, on the way over there, I heard that the FBI was going to take over media relations. And I'm like, okay, like, I'm just going to be here to help and support however I can. Get to the hospital, and I see the chief, and I say, hey, are you okay with the FBI taking lead on media relations, lead PIO? And he goes, Will, I know you. I know how you do public information. I want you. And I was like, done. Like, I'm not even going to argue at this point. So I get the basic information. I go out to the scene. I let everyone know FBI is not going to take the lead PIO position, that I'm going to do it. At no time did I think about anything other than just getting information out, because this guy, he was still out on the loose, right? Mm-hmm. So people are wondering, oh my gosh, this guy is still a danger to society. And so I just went in full PIO mode, and it just happened to be me being the face, right? And even during the breaks, because I tried to give as much information as I possibly could in half-hour increments, not just for the media and to appease them, but as for everyone watching. I didn't think about what was gonna come crashing down on me. So I spent all day there. I get home, and because I'm getting ready to work out, 2 workouts a day, right?
Yeah.
I sit on my bench, and all of a sudden my head felt like it was gonna explode. And I had the worst headache. Like, it was just an adrenaline dump. Like, everything, all the energy that I thought I had was gone. And then I started dealing with oh my gosh, what am I going to do now? Because it went from helping North Kansas City out and to continue to support, because, I mean, our deputies were out there answering calls for service so they can have their meetings and stuff like that, and to not worry about the city for that short amount of time. So we did everything for them. But how was I going to deal with that? I was like, damn it, man, we just lost another one. And not in California, not in New York. It was right here in our front yard. So I had to deal with that very quickly for me because I've lost people over the years. But I think it's because of the experience that I've had, whether good or bad. I knew how to process my emotions. So for me, it just kind of, I hated it, but I know that life goes on.
Yeah.
But now, what about all of my employees? What about people who experience vicarious trauma, right? They're not even there, but they're watching it on TV. Officers from other police departments. And let's not forget about fire EMS. They were out there too. So how are we working with them to make sure that they don't deal with the worst of the worst aftermath? All this is going through my head. But we have, in our policy and really based off of my direction, we have mandatory debriefs. You will go to a critical incident stress management. I'm not going to make you participate, right? Look, I just want you there. You can listen to everyone else talk, but what normally ends up happening?
Everybody just word vomits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, people think, man, Will, you make people go to debriefings? I'm like, hell yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, because people, when they leave, they go, man, I'm sure glad I had to do that.
I'm gonna kind of rewind real quick before we go further. I'll ask you and then I'll preface it. What's it like to be a liar? And I ask you that because it's the same way when you watch like a post NFL interview, right? Every NFL, well, it's good. You know, we're going to work hard. We're going to do the defense, blah, 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 blah. And you always are like, what do you actually want to say? Right? And so when you're in this position, because, you know, in our network, we know the status of the officer. We know.
Yeah.
Right? We get it. The community knows, but the public does not. But here you are. Go put on that smiling face. Go give the minimal information. Because, again, we're like, what you can't say is, he's in a world of hurt. He's probably not going to make it. We're at this point just trying to contact family, but he's basically dead. He's brain dead and all the shit that the public doesn't want to hear. But we got to find this guy.
Yeah.
Like, how do you filter that to make it public friendly? Because I don't know that I could do it. Like,
I tell you, it really is kind of an art form, right? Because in my mind, even when I'm standing before the 20 reporters that are all there on scene, I know because of my training and experience that I'm only going to give them so much information. Like, I had all the information from the get-go, but I had to give them information because let's face it, you know, going back to what I said, do we really want to know all the information?
No, nobody wants to know how your hamburger's made.
No, nobody wants to know what the CIA, what the military was doing overseas. Nobody wants to know what the extent is, right? Like, okay, I don't want to go down that hole. No one wants to know it, but they want to know it at the same time, right? So if you feed it to them slowly, people are able to absorb it and want more, right? If you just go blah and throw it all out there, they're going to be like, oh, and then that's going to cause more problems. So
it's no different than somebody, what's the worst call you've ever been on? You know, like how many times do you get those? And you tell them and you're like, oh, God. You can instantly see the regret in their face.
Yeah. I feel like not necessarily being a liar, just holding the information back a little bit, just a little bit longer. Like, I want to give the information out. In fact, there were a couple times during the interviews that I said information to the reporters for the public, but I already told the team that I wasn't going to say that. But I know, right? And I went back and I was like, sorry, guys, because in my mind, I want the public to know that.
You Ron Burgundy did on the teleprompter.
Right.
You can't put that on the teleprompter. He will read anything. No,
End
that's
quote.
Yeah, end quote. I can't even imagine, I can't even imagine having to do that job.
It wasn't easy, man.
Yeah.
Like I said, I just went in full action role and just was doing it.
Yeah.
Well, and I even watching those interviews, like, and I've experienced this kind of on calls before. Like, I've ran firefighters, you know, and then you turn around and you get that 2 a.m. toe pain or something stupid, and you just want to be like, listen, bitch, do you even know? Like, do you even know what we're doing right now? And I felt the same way watching some of those media questions. I'm like, Karen, do you even fucking get it? And they don't. But how do you say that professionally? You know what I mean? Like I don't.
Well, okay, I've got one for you, right? So when Chief Freeman was doing
he's a great guy, by the way. I was able to meet him
Kevin's amazing
at
guy.
the ice cream social, and he has just gotten a picture with him. Phenomenal man.
Yeah. And so when he was at the podium after Prosecutor Dan White was saying this is what the guy was being charged with and stuff like that, Chief gets up there and he's answering questions. And man, this one reporter didn't care about Danny, didn't care about the North Kansas City Police Department or the community or anything for that matter. What he cared about was how he was going to write his story to fit in why guns are bad, and doing it at like the state level with legislation. Kevin did such a great job. Chief just looked at him and said, I'm not interested in answering that question. Does anybody else have anything? In the back, because I was in the back, I was like, oh,
what? What?
The reporter even had the gall of going, does anybody else want to answer that question? And I felt my blood pressure rising. And I was just like, man, now is not the time. Like,
No.
save those kind of questions.
I
for
wish a
different...
motherfucker would.
Like, I even asked myself, I'm like, how would I have responded to that? Because I mean, I'm already trying to keep my emotions down, right? But man, Chief, it was smooth the way he did it, and I was just like, okay, we're moving on.
Yeah, that's there's a time and place.
Right.
Know your audience. That's not the time and place.
And I got to tell you, all the cameras were on Chief and everyone who was standing behind the Chief. But what no one could see is when that guy answered the question, all the reporters were like, really? That was a dick move. I mean, so when you see the reporters do that, oh yeah, that dude was way out of line.
Yeah. It'd be like, answer me this. Why are hammers bad? Because more people are killed by hammers.
But yeah,
I mean, not to go down that rabbit hole, but if you want to go that argument,
I don't know how you do it, dude. Like, and I joke like I don't call you a liar, but at the same time, it's just one of those like, there's the reality,
Yeah.
and then there's my professional face.
Yeah.
And they can't sometimes always be the same.
What I tell you though, even on TV or in a reporter like scenario, I'm going to tell them what and I hate this term, politically correct answer is, right? But off camera, I'm like, here's the deal. Like this is the reason why I said it the way I did. But I want you to know, because I don't want to be 10 years down the road when I'm ready to retire, but I've got another door of opportunity opening, somebody bringing up, oh, well, you were this, and this 10 years ago in a different line of work.
Look at this tweet we found.
Yeah. But, now we're on this show and I've watched an episode and I thought, man, these guys are cool.
Let's
do
we
this.
got to wait, 10 years to post this?
apparently, yeah. What job is Will going for now?
Oh man, you should hear some of the rumors. I'm like, no, I want to be the sheriff for at least 3 terms, right? If I'm still capable, if I'm not the old guy in overalls with my 38 special in my freaking chest pocket.
I mean, it is Clay County, so
No, I feel like as long as I'm effective and I'm doing the right thing, then I want to stay as the sheriff. But I also know that at some point, being the sheriff is going to be more than just being the figurehead, right?
Mm-hmm.
If I'm not taking our organization in the right direction, then I'm hoping that I'm going to be able to see that.
yeah.
Let's pass it on to the next generation,
Yeah. Well, it's like athletes who stay too long.
right?
Sometimes it's time to retire. Tom Brady. I mean,
I fucking hate Tom Brady.
Man, I'll tell you. And out of self-preservation, I don't want to be 73 years old,
yeah.
50 years in law enforcement. Now, kudos to those guys that can make it that long.
Yeah.
But when I retire in 30 years, with 30 years of law enforcement under my belt, I'll be 57 years old. That is still young.
Yeah. So, and that was going to lead me into that question of
Walmart greeter.
how long is long enough? How much do you need to give of yourself before you can go enjoy your retirement? Man. And I asked that question to firefighters, and, I know people that have been on the job 35, 40, 45 years, and it's like, You have grandkids. What are you doing? I mean, if you still love the job and you're able to do it and all that, I mean, great for you. But
Right.
I mean, how long is long enough? There is life outside of this.
Well, but we get sucked into, this is all I've ever known. This is who I am, right?
How many times have we talked about that? Like you are you are a deputy, but you are a father, you are a husband, you are a brother or mother or sister.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's so easy, and especially too, like right now nationwide shortages in all first responders, and when we're doing this job, and even being forced to do this job due to overtime or whatever it is hard to that line does start to get blurred.
Absolutely. But it's interesting that, somebody who bitches and complains about the job and I hate this and I hate them and I hate them. And then when retirement comes, they're like, I'm going to miss this. Right. And it's just like, whoa, like how you should have had that positive mental attitude the whole time. And if you didn't, you should have asked yourself, why didn't you? I mean, it wasn't always available peer support, CIT, and really the environment, right? Because back in my day, no, I mean, even
We had bed sheets for parachutes.
Yeah.
we
We walked uphill both ways to work. We carried a hot baked potato because it always was snowing. See, I get right where you're coming from.
Even in my short 19, 20 years, I remember the guys that were like, suck it up, buttercup. We don't talk about our problems.
Yes. He said it. I didn't.
Is that what he says?
I think the first probably 40 episodes, I said that at least one time.
But that's what it was. That's the way it was, And now I'm not going to say that word. Don't be a wimp, right? Do your job, but also understand that it's okay to not be okay, right? Mm-hmm. Talk about it, because if you bottle it up, bad things are going to happen. Yeah. We don't want that anymore. We got to value our employees. We got to value the ones that we have and make sure that we take care of them, because they're the ones who are doing the job.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it is a weird kind of dichotomy of you have to do the job and kind of be tough to do it, but at the same time, be able to be vulnerable and let those emotions out and talk about them. And it's a weird mix that people don't really get. And, we don't do a really great job. I don't know how your department does it, but in the academy process and the lead up process, I mean, and it's nationwide. I know some departments do it a little better than others, but by and large, you don't prepare the people for the job of the things they're going to see or how to deal with the things that they're going to see. Now, we've talked about that, about how, departments are making strides and, there's been positive change with that, but we're 20 years behind, at least 20 years behind. And the prevailing theory, at least in my career, I've got 18 years on, is to suck it up. Leave your feelings at home in your feelings box. I mean,
dude, so leave that whole, leave it at home, leave it at work, mentality. That's impossible.
Yeah.
When I'm stressed out at work, I take it home. Now, fortunately, my wife and I have great communication, and I share with her things that bother me that I'm okay with sharing with her. But I don't want to subject her to vicarious trauma either,
Exactly.
I had a really shitty day, and I don't want you to have to experience that, let alone do I want to rehash that.
Yeah.
Right. But I also know that I have people that I look up to that I can go and talk with, and not always people who are older than I am. Right. I have a network of people that I can talk with. So I think it's important, but man, we are not robots. We can't flip that switch and leave stuff at work or leave stuff at home. That follows you.
Yeah. And I think this is my own personal opinion. I think it's somebody saw something about compartmentalization and took the first part of it and said, this is a great idea, and didn't go ahead and read the whole, they didn't read the rest
of the
mission statement. They did not read the full mission statement. Yeah. And they kind of left out the most important part was, hey, you still got to deal with your shit, dumbass.
Well, but now too, even you talk about with the shortages of just all departments all the way around with staffing, it's hey, you need to talk about that, but not right now because we need you back out there real quick. You got to, it's, and I'm just as, actually, I've done better. I don't know how many times Jeremy's chewed my ass about the way I was working overtime at 3, 4, 5, 9 days in a row straight.
The episode that I watched, they were busting your chops about that.
Yeah, that's.
But like
it's a common practice.
I was noticing it because it was just like, I'd do these 7 days straight, take a day off, and go right back, and there was no, or even worse, I would do, god awful amounts. I did 14 days straight one time leading up to a vacation. Why? Because I wanted the money for vacation. The first 4 days of vacation were just fucking recovering from like, and now I look back at it, I'm like, God, you're stupid, bro. Like, you're dumb. You are really dumb. But,
yeah. And who was telling you that the whole
not
time?
Not you.
This guy was like, dude, you need to take a break. You're not acting like yourself. Just fucking stop.
Yeah.
Shut up. I'm fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. We actually had to put in policy that you could only work so many hours a day. That includes off duty, right? Because, man, I remember when I was a young officer, I was working 9 jobs, off-duty jobs, in addition to my job, right? And I remember I worked my 10-hour shift, probably worked 12, 13 hours total because of the overtime that was associated with all the cases that we were working. And then I went straight to my off-duty job where I worked for 12 hours. And I was like, oh, I'll be okay because I've got the next 3 days off. And I remember going home in traffic in Phoenix on, was it I-10? And next thing I know, I hear people honking their horns. And I'm like, man, what's going on? And I'm looking, I'm like, oh, they're honking at me. The car that was in front of me on the highway was probably 100 yards ahead of me. I fell asleep at the wheel. And I tell you what, man, when I left Phoenix PD, I told myself I was never going to work off duty again. Because bad things happen.
Yeah.
I mean, we can only go so long. I mean, I remember when I was in the military, I went, I think, 3 days without sleeping. And that's just not good for us.
No.
Bad things happen. Mentally, I mean, it's just, we can't do it. So I know employees, they get pissed off because I'm like, oh, I'm making this much over here and this much over here. And I'm like, yeah, but why are you working so much? Oh, because I want a boat and but what happens is they buy all these things.
Now there's a lifestyle to maintain.
Yeah, because now they have payments and now they have to work off duty and they get sucked into that vacuum.
Yep.
And they get upset.
Why do you get a boat? To relax and work. Why do you work so much? To have the boat.
Man, it just seems like we're talking in circles. Or about circles.
Yeah.
But you've got young deputies, young officers that are working overtime and they're making so much money. Like I was questioned one time about the fact that I had employees who were making more money than I was. And my response was good. I was like,
they're earning it.
Yeah. I said, but here's the problem. It's not that I'm allowing them to work so much overtime. I was like, the problem is I don't have people to do the job. And they are picking up the slack.
Picking up the slack. Yeah.
And then they were like, well, but it's kind of hard to look at when you're looking at the numbers and, somebody who's supposed to be making $36,000 a year is making over $100,000 a year. And I'm like, yeah, don't you see that as a problem? Because I do.
Yeah.
I don't want them to make that. I want them to make that much money, but I want them to make it in such a way that we show them that we value them, right? And we're paying them accordingly. Not saying, man, I've got 20 vacancies right now on this shift, and this shift. Who's going to step up? Well, it's going to be the same 5 guys who step up and they're working like, I'm going to work 14 days straight to go on vacation.
We're not going to make this episode about me again, goddammit. We're not doing that. We're not. I don't know what you said to him ahead of time. We're not doing that shit.
You brought it up. I didn't bring it up.
Getting yelled at by the goddamn sheriff for working overtime. This is bullshit.
And you know better.
Oh, how the worm has turned.
Why do you not work so much anymore? Well, the fucking sheriff yelled at me. So there's that.
No, we got to protect ourselves too, man. Yeah. We got to keep ourselves straight. We love our jobs, but man, there are other things that we love too. There are other things that love us. Family, let's just look. I mean, I don't have pets, right? I'm going to use a pet though. Let's just say a dog. I will never have another dog. I'll never have another cat. Why? Because I'm soon to be an empty nester and I don't want that responsibility anymore, because animals are family to me and my wife. But here's the problem. When you're working 10, 12 hours, 24 hours, and you got your dog locked up in a cage, right? You have to rely on people to go and take care of them and stuff like that. So I say dogs because my son has an emotional support dog. 3 years in the Army, 1 tour in Iraq. Now he's a nursing student at Columbia College. Doing great. But he has a dog. And I'm like, son, what the hell are you thinking? Like, you're a full-time college student now. And what's going to happen to Ebby? Well, I've got friends. Okay. All right. But she doesn't care about those people.
Yeah.
Like, she cares about you.
Yeah.
And now you either have to have her locked up in her kennel or find a friend to take her outside. Now his situation's changed. He's actually in a house with roommates now, and they've got this massive backyard. So great for Ebby. And I refer to Ebby as my grand dog, right? Because I'm like, I don't want no dog until she comes over, and I'm like, oh, Ebby, come here, give me kisses,
Give Papa some love,
right?
Honey, we're going to Wayside Waves.
Yeah. But so it doesn't have to be family; it can be your pets. Because I don't know about you guys, but I actually had a cat one time who was my cat. I love cats. I'm allergic to them, but I love cats. And because I was in the military, moving around so much, my cat got some kind of like disorder, disease, and we ultimately had to put him down because he couldn't take the change. He never had time to acclimate to the move that we made, which was oftentimes several states away.
Yeah.
And I had to put him down. And I think that was the final draw for me. I was like, nope. I was like, parents are not supposed to outlive their kids. And let's face it, cats and dogs have a very limited lifespan.
Yeah.
So, there are other things that love us too. This job is going to be here long after we're gone. Why can't we enjoy life while we do the job?
Yeah, exactly. There are other things out there, and you're more than just a uniform.
Which brings me to this. I always encourage our employees to have friends outside of law enforcement. Man, if you work all day on the job and then you go home or hang out with guys who are from the job, like, really, are you getting anything else outside of the job? No,
Nope.
You're stuck in that vacuum.
Yep.
And it's even just as bad as I have a lot of cop friends, and we still go and bitch about the same Gandys and the same style calls and it's the same thing.
Yeah.
It's just a different color of truck we ride around in.
Yeah, I mean, I've got friends who are firefighters, and I can actually show you who they are. I'm not just saying, I've got friends who are firefighters.
Typical cop thing to say.
Right? They let me be their friend.
Yeah. Yeah.
They'll be right around the fire truck, and it's a real fun time.
Yeah. But, you're right. We get around, we start talking, and it's the same level of bullshit, just from a different colored truck.
And it's almost, it's like a cult. Like, you go to a wedding, right? Right? Like, you and your wife go to your wife's friend's sister's daughter's wedding. And within an hour, somehow the 4 cops that are there at the corner in the table, you know what I mean? Like, it's just
sipping their Jack and Coke or whatever they're, drinking the whiskey or, whatever beer.
Yeah.
Yeah. And are they sitting or are they standing in the corner?
standing in the corner facing the door.
Backs to the wall.
Yep.
But yeah, it's almost, I hate to say the word toxic, but sometimes it does flirt with it. It's just like, it's easy for us to hang out with the cop and firefighter friends because, like, we don't have to truly put effort into maintaining the friendship. The job does it for us.
Right.
And I've found myself just as guilty as my non-LE and FD friends, like, maintain those relationships, because it can very easily become the, hey, what's up? What's new? How's the daughter been? The same routine, right? Whereas with our friends, it's like, dude, did you fucking run that call with that one motherfucker? That's easy, and it's new, but that doesn't make it more healthier.
Right.
And I've been guilty of that.
It's easy because that's what we live, right? We spend more waking hours at work than we do anywhere else. And when you constantly see it, it's easy to talk about, right? It's not easy to talk about something that's non-law enforcement related, non-fire related. That takes energy, right? Yeah. And let's face it, man, we work a lot. We stress out a lot. I don't want to have to think about what conversation I'm going to have with this person or that person.
No, Rick, I don't fucking care about hedge funds. I don't. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just as guilty as when they start talking. I'm like, I don't fucking care.
My wife.
How many hedge fund managers do you know?
That's funny. That blows me away because my wife, she works in the accounting world, right? And she asks me, "Hey, how was your day?" And I'll talk, and I'm like, "But babe, tell me how your day was." My day was boring. You don't want to hear anything, about that. And I'm like, "But actually, I do." Yeah. You're my best friend. Like, if I can't have a conversation with you about what you are involved with at your job, then I suck. So tell me about your day. And then she'll go into black and red and spreadsheets. And I'm just like,
what have I done?
I'm like, holy shit.
I suck.
Hey, man, but you know what? I've learned over the years that I had to transition from listening to respond to listen to just listen.
Yeah.
Because let's face it, man, our loved ones, they don't want the solution. They don't want the answer, especially when they had a bad day. They just want you to listen.
You know, my ex-wife was big on that. Like, and it got to the point when we'd come up, I'm like, do you want an ear or do you want a solution? Like, do you want me to listen or do you want a solution? And sometimes she's like, I just want a bitch. Okay, cool. And then, I'm still sitting there like, well, we could solve this. And she's like, what do you think? I'm like, well, let me tell you, because I've been scheming this whole time.
I could have told you at minute 2, but no, I had to wait 35 more minutes.
Hence why he said ex-wife.
Yeah. Apparently I have a listening problem. Whatever.
Oh, man.
So I think she said.
See, what happened was.
But yeah, I think it's important to have friends outside of our circles. I mean, I think it keeps us grounded too, because the type of conversation or the topics of conversation are going to change, right? They're going to be different. They're not going to be, no. Let me take it back. It's not going to be hey, I know you're a firefighter. I know you're a cop. What would you say? My hairstylist brother's cousin's daughter got pulled over, and it's like, okay, those are always going to come up.
Yeah.
But they don't always come up, especially if you build relationships with people who, they know you're a cop, but they know you more than as just a cop.
Yeah.
Or
they
a
know you
firefighter.
as Will.
Right.
Yeah.
People, my wife tells me, she's like, no stranger. And I'm like, yeah, it's like, because I truly want to know about them. Now, there are some people, especially when the politics side come into it, and there's a room full of people and I have to talk with 30 people in a half an hour. Yeah, those conversations are going to be a little superficial, but we all get it, right? But if we are outside of that that scenario, I'm going to sit down with you and we're going to freaking have coffee for the next 2 hours. If I have something on my calendar and if I can push it off, I'm going to push it off. Why? Because human capital is worth more than anything else that we can have.
Yeah. And
that's the way I do with all of our employees too. I literally have an open door policy.
Wow.
I was waiting for the chuckles, right?
Yeah.
No, look, my door is never closed unless I have to have a closed door conversation with one of my command staff members or my undersheriff, HR, or something like that. Otherwise, my door is always open. Even when I'm at work, I'm knee deep in a freaking report or something that I have to get done. If somebody walks in and they say, Sheriff, do you have a minute? So my computer is like facing the wall. My door, as you're looking at my computer, is over here. I literally turn my chair around, face the desk, and I say, come on in. I don't say, yeah, I have a minute, because then it's like awkward. Well, can I? No, just come on in. Let's talk.
Go.
Yeah.
So I just because my door is open doesn't mean I have an open door policy. Like, I will actually make you come into my office. If you've gone that far to say, hey, do you have a minute? I'm like, come on in, have a seat. And, man, people appreciate that. They're just like, wow, you're like the most personable sheriff that anyone can ever remember. And I'm not saying anything bad about the previous sheriffs. It's just they were different people. And when you said, hey, do you have a minute? This better fucking be good, right? And such, they're like, it can wait. And then what couldn't wait was actually a major issue, but it was never addressed. So it was taken care of probably in a way that shouldn't have been taken care of. So I had that open door policy. Damn, I forgot where I was going with that. Anyway, what else?
What not only, I can ask the question of like, what advice do you have for law enforcement? Where people want to, I don't fucking care. What do you have?
Be a fireman.
Yeah, true.
Sorry. I had to.
What advice do you have for future leaders in law enforcement?
Man, future leaders in law enforcement. So, have you read my dissertation?
Doctor.
Why didn't you send that to us in the email? Thanks, Will. Jesus.
Because it's out in the World Wide Web.
Google it.
Hey, yeah. Go to Google Scholar, man. Multi-generational perceptions of the law enforcement work environment.
Huh?
No, check this out. So in my research and my topic, I wanted to explore the psychosocial aspect of law enforcement, specifically law enforcement with the different generations. So baby boomers, they fit in my research. Before baby boomers, which, man, I mean, literally in my research, I had one guy answer up. He was 80 years old, still in law enforcement. I love him to death. I know who it was, even though it was supposed to be anonymous. But, that was an outlier, so I had to push it aside. Post-millennials, Generation Z, I had to push them aside because when I was doing my research, post-millennials were only 3-year officers if they chose to go into law enforcement, and I didn't have enough people do my survey. So it boiled down to baby boomers, Generation X, and millennials. And really what motivated me to do my research was every time I turned around and somebody was bitching and complaining about somebody not doing their job, they were always referring to those damn millennials. Those damn millennials. Well, you know how old the oldest millennial is right now?
Like 38.
42.
Like
Nope.
42 years old.
Nope. Not part of that generation. You don't put that evil on me, Ricky Bobby.
So as I dove into this research, I wanted to know which generation was the problem. Well, it's not the millennials. Okay.
Fucking old shits.
It was Generation X. Gen Xers. And it's not because they want to be assholes. It's not because they seek power or anything like that. It's because that was the generation that had to do the most for themselves. Latchkey kids, right? Mm-hmm. You had the highest number of layoffs because of all the corporate takeovers back in the early 80s. Mm-hmm. You had the highest numbers of divorce, right? So, these kids growing up in Generation X, I mean, they're out there doing it themselves. When did you have to be home? When the frickin' streetlights came on. Otherwise, you got your ass beat, right? Mm-hmm. You didn't have cell phones. You didn't have anything else except your friends in your neighborhood. So now those are the leaders in law enforcement. It's the Gen Xers. And if you look at an organization and you look at everything that they have on their website, the things that they're doing with the community or the lack thereof, I'm going to venture to say that the ones that don't have that website, the ones that aren't in the community, are being run by leaders from Generation X or older. The ones that have a solid website, the ones that have social media, the ones that are out there in the community doing things, they're probably being led by the later trailing edge Gen Xers, leading edge millennials. So for law enforcement leaders, I'm like, I think the best thing that I can say is when you get appointed, when you get elected to that office, right? Don't forget where you came from. That's the quickest way to go down a slippery slope, is to forget where you came from. Now, I'm not saying be the chief, be the sheriff, but still with the mentality of what it takes to be on the street, because you're done being a cop at that level. You now have to be the best administrator that you can possibly be. And yes, that means paperwork. That means emails. You better frickin' read your entire email because there's good information in there.
Or at least pertinent information.
Right.
Might not be good.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
So yeah, you have to strive to be the best administrator that you can be and not be a cop anymore. You know, the whole, well, he's a cop's cop. Well, if you're a cop's cop, then there's something being sacrificed at that level. And that's the administrative part. That's going out there and being more than what's just involved in or expected of you at the job.
Mm-hmm. And I think that, I don't want to interrupt you, but I think that's something that's valuable for even the newer officers and the newer firefighters, even transition that over to the fire department side of whenever you have to realize that whenever people get promoted to the captain level, the battalion chief level on our side, it's a different ball game. It's not the same. And, you know, whenever you get promoted to sergeant or lieutenant or everything, you have a different set of responsibilities. It's not just being a door kicker or whatever, writing traffic tickets, whatever it is you guys do. I don't know. But
eat donuts. They have to eat more donuts the more they get promoted.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah. That's
Only
why
if
they
they're
have to
from
do
Lamar's Donuts.
So, but that's something to realize is you have to be able to adapt and change, and you have different duties and roles that you need to be proficient and great at. So,
and that's where I'm interested too, is how do you still be, because you're still a cop.
Absolutely.
Where's that balance come in of, and maybe I'm one of the younger millennials that complain about this, but there's always that, like, they don't even know what the fuck, they don't even know how to do my job anymore. They don't know what my job is. How do
There's
you
some validity to that.
But how do you
how do you bridge that
Yeah,
gap?
how do you bridge that? Because you seem like you got your shit together. We're not talking to some old salty Gen Xer that's like, oh God, fuck Facebook. Like, you know what you're talking about. So how do you bridge that? So how do you bridge that gap of still keeping that knowledge to be relevant with your frontline personnel, but still being a proficient leader?
So for me, it's being able to walk around, right? Getting that raw information from the employees who are actually doing the job, right? I don't want to presume that I still know what I'm doing, because let's face it, people make jokes about, you know, when they see me, they're like, oh, I hope you don't arrest me or pull me over. And if you do, can you give me a free pass? And I'm like, look, if I'm the one pulling you over, we're both having a bad day, okay? Because I don't pull people over anymore.
Shit has gone horribly sideways.
We have radios, right? So we are expanding our operations. We're growing, we're reorganizing, and, you know, we don't have enough equipment. So I've literally told my technology lieutenant that if you need my radio, go ahead and take it. Well, Sheriff, you need a radio. I go, why? He goes, because if there's a scene and you need to come out, and I go, if I'm the first person on the scene, everyone's having a bad day, all right? Because when we're all done, I'm going to be questioning, why was I the first person on the scene?
Were you?
So, you know, but, you know, in reality...
There's a sale at Lamar's.
right.
Sorry, Chief.
I don't want to be the first person on the scene. Now, I want people there as quickly as possible if it calls for that. But, you know, the same reason why I don't pull cars over, because when my deputies hear 8100, go ahead. Yeah, I'm pulling a car over at this location. Everyone's going, holy shit, the sheriff's out here. And then what do? They're driving 100 miles an hour to get to me because they're like, he's the old guy. I don't even think he knows what officer safety is anymore. Of course I do, but you know, they're rushing to me.
Does he know how to undo the strap on his gun? I mean,
It's like with like a chief, you know, God, McKee, a guy we had on the podcast, is real bad about, like, you know, after dinner we'd be doing dishes, and all of a sudden you look up and he's doing a dish, and it's just a mad dash to the sink because we're not letting the battalion chief do this. He's got to do it. Like, and in fact, we'll probably injure him in the process just to make sure he doesn't do the dishes.
So you get it, right? Yeah. So I told him, I'm like, I don't need the radio. I will need a radio eventually, but I'm probably going to have my executive services sergeant with me. I'm probably going to have the captain with me, because if I have to be out at the scene, you bet your ass the captain's going to be out there too from the respective division. So I'm like, I'll be okay. Yeah. I still have my radio in the car. I can still monitor. And really, I'm not monitoring the radio at all. You know what I'm monitoring? My emails, phone calls, text messages. I mean, that's how I'm staying busy. So if you need me, call me.
Yeah. One of these numbers, you'll get through.
Right. So, man, keep me on track. Where were we going with that?
Bridging the gap.
Oh, bridging the gap. Okay, so So I try to take as much time possible to be out there where the employees are doing the work, because that's going to be raw information, unfiltered. And when they have a question, it's really funny because it's kind of like, I know what the process is. I go into the roll call room and there's 7 deputies from 2 different shifts. One doesn't even belong in there. And they're all going, shit, the sheriff is here. Do I run out or I just act like I belong, right? Of course I see it and I break the ice right away, right? And then one thing leads to another, and the next thing you know, they're all like, well, Sheriff, what about this? I heard about this. And I'm like, that's what I encourage. I want you to talk because I have the answers. If I don't have the answers, I'll be the first to say, you know what? I don't know. Let me get back to you on that. But a lot of that is taken care of with command staff notes. You know, all the information that we put out. We have a monthly newsletter that we put out. So, I mean, it's almost like communication overkill, if there was such a thing. I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
So bridging that gap, I mean, it's just being there, being present.
Yeah.
I think I cut you off. What were you saying?
No,
Please don't let him talk.
Yeah, no. I think we've established in the course of doing this, it's always a better podcast if I just sit here and shut up.
You know, there for a second, I was like, man, I'm doing a lot of talking. I don't know what these guys have in mind, what questions they have, but I'm just
and
let me go. I got a mic.
Yeah. Well, and that's the point. I mean, we're on here every week. You're the guest. That's why we had you on the show. We want to hear what you have to say. And if we spend the whole and we've had that happen before where we have the guest and it's like, and then what happened?
Hey, man, how's it going today? Good. What do you do? I'm a firefighter. You like it? It's all right. All right, guys. Thanks for watching. Fuck.
Shortest episode ever. Could have been a TikTok. So, yeah, no, that's the whole purpose of this is, to get your thoughts and get your viewpoints and see what you guys are up to. So,
and too, like, it's just for the citizens to watch it and, like, your own officers. Like, who are you? Right? We see the face for a campaign. We see the face behind a desk. But who are you?
Man.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. So who is Will Akin? I mean, you can go to my website. You can see all of my history. You can go to my Facebook page. You can see what I do with my family and everything about my family. I'm like, there are no secrets when it comes to Will Akin. Like, I will share with you everything and anything. There are like an 8-month period that I can't. There's investigations that I can't, but for the most part, you're going to know who I am. But then that's all fine and dandy. What am I doing to prove that? Well, Bear McCauley, Corporal, Jeremiah, let's go on a 210-mile bike ride on the Katy Trail. I got to know those guys.
I talked to him. He's like, yeah, I just got to know those. And I was like, fuck that.
yeah.
I just no.
I try to coordinate things. Like I love mountain biking. That's one of my passions. I've been doing it for over 20 years. I think 25 years. But I want to get people from the sheriff's office to go mountain biking with me. Let's go to Smithfield Trails, Stocksdale, not Swope.
I would advise against that.
I hear there's really great trails out there, but I'm like, I don't want a broken window in my car.
Oh, it's not that. It's about finding a body while you're down there.
No, that too, right?
And if you don't have a radio on, you're screwed.
Help me. As I'm pedaling my bike, help me.
Oh, shit.
Sorry.
Wow. That's
there's a challenge to that too. I leave my door open, and even people who I knew when I first got here and I've known for almost 10 years, for whatever reason, now that I'm the sheriff, I don't want to go upstairs. I don't want to bother. I don't want to bother you. I'm like, but I'm still Will. Like,
nope.
Yeah.
And it's hard.
Yeah. There's a different, and I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, older guys that are kind of like that a little bit. I know whenever I came on the fire department, you didn't talk to the chief as a firefighter. You
No
talk
way,
to,
man.
yeah, there's that chain of command, and it was clear and concise. And, since I've been on and I see it more with the younger people, they're more willing to bridge that gap. And it's more acceptable for them or whatever.
Well, and I'm just as one of the younger people, I'm of the mind, like I don't know a stranger. Like I get along with everybody.
Yeah.
And I do find it hard sometimes, and like even one of our like my shift's deputy chief, he's my I don't go around, I never skip my chain of command, but there's times where I've just had conversations just for insight from him, like because there's still I don't want to. There's still a lot of great knowledge to be passed down there, and it's a catch-22. Like, hey, Captain, will you call the battalion chief to call the deputy chief to ask this question for me? It's kind of super personal, and you know what I mean. So like, you lose it in translation. And I just had a weird call the other day that call went fine, but I called him afterwards. Like, I want to pick your brain on this. What do you think about this? Because he's been a great mentor for me, and there's great knowledge to be had there, and I enjoy that, and I want to learn, and that's how I envision. Me growing in my career. But at the same time, there's a chain of command for a reason. So I've always struggled with that because I am that guy. I'm like, hey, friend, I'm your boss. Yeah. Okay, but you're my friend too. Like I just,
The younger generations have an easier time with that. My generation, it's you're talking with the sheriff and you haven't told me what you're talking about yet. We're going to have a conversation. Now, culture shift. We don't have that anymore. Now, there are still some commanders that have a little bit of a problem with that raw, unfiltered information getting to me. But I always go back to them and I say, look, that's what I want. So you either get right with it or get gone. It goes a lot easier, a lot nicer, but that's kind of where I'm leading that, right?
Yeah.
But I also tell them that I still value them as a commander. And if I didn't need them, they wouldn't be there. Right. So the mere fact that you're still here, be okay with it, because they might have an idea that's going to be way better than what we ever could have imagined. And we've made that transition and it's a lot easier. And I tell you, man, a lot of my younger employees, they'll reach out to me on Instagram, one on Snapchat.
Yo, what's up, Sheriff?
And I go,
check out this reel. It's funny as shit.
Right. But I'm okay with that, right? That doesn't go without saying that we can just do away with the chain of command, though. I mean, when you have that span of control, there's no way I can know everything that's happening on a shift, right? Or in investigations because I've got 100 other things to deal with at my level. Mm-hmm. So people will come to me, okay, I'm not going to ask a question and ever expect you to know right then and there. If you do, great. But I do expect you to go get the information, right? But there are still some people out there that are like, I've got to know everything about my shift. I got to know where they're at, what they're doing. Well, what do we call those people? Micromanagers, right? And that's just a freaking toxic environment in itself. Mm-hmm. So I get it, but I also give kind of like the way out. It's like, hey, look, it's okay if you don't know. Just let me know when you have a chance. And then they go and they find out and we're good to go. But there's no way that we can't have a chain of command because there's just too many things going on. But I remember having a conversation with my command staff. We're in a command staff meeting and we are a paramilitaristic organization and chain of command has to be followed. This was last year, by the way. And I'm listening and my tell is when I lean back in the chair and I start tapping my fingers.
and then
right, so finally and then came and I was like, okay, so you mentioned paramilitaristic, okay, because we're talking about chain of command. I get it. Quasi-militaristic. Okay, with a show of hands, how many people have been in the military? I said, I don't count me. I think there was one other person. 21 command staff members. And I'm like, look, don't throw that paramilitaristic anything. Don't talk about quasi-militaristic because you have never experienced it. What you know is the chain of command that we have allowed to persist for decades, which is really outdated.
Elaborate.
Yeah, I encourage my employees to be creative, right? If they have an idea, submit it. I've gone so far to say that if you have an idea, I don't even want you to run it by your supervisor. I want you to send it directly to me on an email. Now, some of them are like, email? I got to write an email? Why can't I just send you a direct message on Snapchat? You know?
That way they'll go away in 24 hours if you don't like it.
But I do say that send it directly to me, but I want you to include your supervisor, your lieutenant, your captain, because I want everyone to be on the same page. People are like, holy shit, like, are you serious? Even my commanders were like, oh, but I want to know. And I'm like, no, you don't. I don't want you to know, because what's going to end up happening is you're going to filter that information by the time it gets to me. And then it's just going to be, well, that's a dumb idea. And what I'm missing is all the context
That made it a great idea.
that made it a great idea. Yeah.
Yeah, that's got to be hard in your job, is not getting the unfiltered stuff.
It is very hard. It's hard, but you know what? It's also because that's just the way we've always done it.
Well, yeah, which, I mean, surely we just continue to do that.
Dude, I would hate my life if I had to be the one to make all the hard decisions and not have any relationships with any of my employees.
Yeah.
Because then really, what am I messaging to them?
You're a manager at that point.
Yeah. Like, I don't care about you. I'm just managing the business.
You don't even have to be a cop. You can just be a pencil pushing manager.
We don't have those anymore. I feel good about saying that, yeah, at least in the sheriff's office. But I think we're also the exception and not the rule, because there are rods in every organization, retired on duty.
Yep.
What are they doing? Not a damn thing.
Hindering.
Yeah, oh yeah, they are, because they're not making us better. They might not be doing anything either, but they're preventing creativity and being able to allowing our employees to have ownership in what happens in the sheriff's office.
Oh, you mean being invested in there?
Wait, what?
Fucking Rainbow Land
Again.
Back to Rainbow Land.
I'm going to need you to go back to talking about how things used to be, and the way that we've always done things is the way that we're going to continue, because...
Who does that serve, though?
I mean, the public, obviously. It makes everybody safer. Come on. We don't want to innovate. Let's pump the brakes here.
Same way the fire department. It's the same way in the fire department. Like, hey, you guys want to keep doing things the same way? No, we hate this way. All right, let's change it. No, we hate change.
Exactly.
Oh, it's the same in law enforcement. I hate the way that things are now, but I don't want to change either.
Yeah.
That's why in our mission statement, embrace change, baby. It's coming.
Well, and I mean, just look at the way that the world has changed in the past, let's take 20 years. It's vastly different. The way that we have to do our jobs, I mean, yeah, it's the same, but it's also vastly different. We can't just do the same things over and over again, because we're not going to get the outcome that we're trying to achieve.
Well, I mean, now, like, look at 10 years ago. You could have a whole division. If in a perfect world with perfect funding and staffing, you could literally have a whole division in a department just for social media and PIO and public relations. A whole ass division. Probably just as equal to what a road division is. There would have been no need to have that 10, 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, shoot, when you talk about public relations, I have a public relations manager. And she was also a mentor of mine when I first got into public information. People say that I stole her from Kansas City PD, but you know what? It's just a better place to work at the Clay County Sheriff's Office. No, she's amazing. And I asked her recently, I said, hey, do you have enough work to do for me to justify another position for you to manage, right? And it's not managing people, it's managing our reputation. That's what's important right now.
Yeah.
And she was like, oh, I could totally justify it. And I go, yeah, but can you justify it? And she's like, not right now. Right. But look at how big we are. I mean, we have 230 employees, right? We're not Kansas City PD. We're not Kansas City Fire. But with those entities, you're over 1,000 employees. You better have more than just one person doing it. And not just one person or 5 people who are severely underpaid. Look, when I was looking for a PR manager, when we were going through the process, I mean, there were people coming in from the news networks thinking that I had over $100,000 a year to pay them. But they were legit. Like, I was like, oh my gosh, like I could only dream of having someone like that, right? But you need to pay for it. So if you pay somebody $30,000 a year, that's probably too low. $40,000 a year. You get what you pay for. And if they're not managing your reputation, you're going to suck on multiple platforms.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. It's government work. The money, like you said, we're taxpayer funded. So the amount of funds is finite. And we have to figure out, prioritize, and all that stuff of where can we allocate that money to have the biggest impact.
Yeah. And, and the prioritization, that's the issue, right? So I prioritize based off of how much money I can get in my budget for another position. How much does Facebook cost?
It's free.
How much does TikTok cost?
It's free 99.
Yeah.
Right. So it's not a matter of money. It's a matter of finding somebody who's interested in doing it. For example, our Facebook and Twitter pages, I started back in 2013. After starting it, maybe 2 months later, I was like, what the hell am I doing? Like, I am way in over my head. So I asked for volunteers in my unit, right? I had all of communications, and I had a few other employees in like crime analysis and evidence and property. One person spoke up, and he goes, I don't know anything about it. I know a little bit about it, but I'm interested in doing it. He's one of my dispatchers. And I was like, dude, it's yours. I just keep me posted.
Congratulations, you've been promoted by.
No takebacks.
Well, I'll tell you what, man, when he stepped up, he didn't just step up and run a mediocre Facebook, Twitter page. Like, he stepped up and we went viral. Because of him, we were actually published in Reader's Digest not once, but twice.
Holy shit.
Okay? Because of stupid shit that happens in Clay County. And because of his personality and his humor, one of the times that we got published in Reader's Digest was the dude down off of 210 near Missouri City, in between Missouri City and 291, was out in the field burning ammunition to get rid of it. I think I could think of other ways to get rid of ammunition.
I mean,
but he was.
I wonder if he was friends with my dude that burned his couch.
they have a club meetings on Wednesday.
We're brothers.
Yeah. So he was burning some more stuff, and it kind of started getting out of control. He jumps in his van, starts driving his van over to put the fire out. His van catches on fire. All the rest of the ammunition in his van starts getting cooked off. We get called out. Okay.
You can't make this shit up.
Oh, man. So we blast that out, and man, Reader's Digest picked that up, and we went, not Reader's Digest, but the world of the Book of Faces, right? We went viral. People just loved it, man, because it was funny.
And that's what you got to do with, like, these jobs are shit shows. Let's at least laugh about it.
Exactly. And you know what? So when we talk about reputation, there is still a mindset out there in law enforcement leadership that's like, oh, no, we can't make fun of that.
A dude
We
drove
can't have
naked
humor.
the wrong way on a highway on a 4-wheeler.
We went viral with that one too.
That I still share that every year. Every year on the anniversary, I share that. That dude's a fucking legend. Like, I don't know at what point, like, I don't know how you arrest him. I don't know.
At least arrest him without laughter.
Yeah,
involved. like I don't want to be mean to you, bro, but dude, I gotta laugh
sir,
at
put
you.
your hands up,
Yeah.
high five. All right, now put them behind your back. Fuck.
There's got to be, yeah.
Or the one time when we were chasing, helping another agency out, looking for a suspect, bailed, was hiding in a culvert, and he farted so loud that it gave away his position. Right? So we were like, dude, we're totally going to put this out on social media. And that went viral. Well, you know what? There are people out there who think that law enforcement shouldn't be doing that. But I'm like, we're freaking people too. Like, when I take this uniform off, I am a husband. I am a dad. I am your neighbor. I am a member of your community. So I don't have to be this cop 24/7. And I'm not going to not pretend that we're not people either.
That shit's funny. Like, it
It
is.
Well, and that goes back to the whole, we're people too, and you have to have things outside of the job, but you got to make fun of the job too, because, Shit's funny.
Man, so there's this thing called coping mechanisms.
Oh, never
There's
heard of those.
healthy coping mechanisms and unhealthy. We're gonna laugh about it.
Yeah, I literally every year that guy pops up on my timeline and I share it. It's always like the Batman quote, like either like die a hero or live long enough to be whatever. Like, it's like,
I think there's a huge responsibility with social media, though. Yeah, we can make fun of different incidents, not of the people who are involved, but just the sheer craziness of it, right?
Yeah.
But we still have a responsibility, and that is to be legitimate when we have to be legitimate. But how do you build your following on social media if you don't have a personality?
Yeah.
Right? And that responsibility also includes not only our reputation, but every reputation that has a badge, a shoulder patch, because we are all in this together.
Yeah.
You can't tell me that if something happens in California that went wrong, that we're not going to feel it here. If it happens in St. Louis, that we're not going to feel it here. So
Well, yeah.
we have to be responsible for everyone.
Yeah. Well, and by and large, the public, all they see is the uniform.
Right.
It's not, well, you don't work for that agency, so you're not part of that. It's, no, you have the same uniform.
Yep. And we all get lumped into it together.
Yeah.
yeah, and we've seen it the last 10 years. There are no cops that were Ferguson cops that work here. Yet what happens in Ferguson has a huge impact here.
Oh, man.
There are no Minneapolis cops that work here. But what
Yeah.
happened in Minneapolis has a huge impact here. It's
Absolutely. In fact, Ferguson was so far-reaching that there is this term called the Ferguson effect now. And people are like, oh, no, you're just making that up.
Nah.
You're just, putting it, labeling a certain situation that would, it's like, no, because every situation that happens like that, they can go back to Ferguson, right? Now, that's just a bad deal altogether. But that was the last one that kind of changed the way law enforcement does law enforcement. Yeah, bad things continue to happen, and that's why I say it's responsible. We have the responsibility to represent everyone who has a uniform, but there are still law enforcement leaders that are out there that don't want to accept that responsibility, and because they don't want to accept that responsibility, not that because they can't, it's just they don't want to. They feel like they don't have the time. Because, man, it's freaking time demanding to be on 7 different social media platforms and paying attention to every time I'm tagged on something, or somebody asks me a question on my personal page and I have to redirect them to my official page because I'm like, you don't want my personal opinion. Because, bro, you're going to see a different side of Will, but I'll give you the politically correct official position on my page. Or better yet, let's make an appointment. Come to my office. I'll close the door if you want it closed, and we'll have a real talk. No bullshit talk.
no tough keyboard warriors.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think, holy crap, we've been going for a while.
It's easy though.
Yeah, it is. So, with that in mind, and we have taken up a lot of your time, which
My wife's going to be like, you said you were going to come home at 8:30 tonight.
Yeah.
Plus, it's like soccer time, like +5.
I was hanging out with my friends, babe.
It's penalty minutes. That's what it is. Yeah, God, I really appreciate you coming and doing this.
Yeah, thanks for having
was
me, guys.
Awesome.
This has been a great episode.
Yeah.
And I mean, literally, we've been at this for almost 3 hours.
Yeah.
And
That's crazy.
we could still go another.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So,
You have to come back, sorry.
Yeah, you
But
have
if
to
it
come back.
wasn't for the fact that I have to take a piss right now, I'm like, oh, guys, dude, my eyeballs are floating right now.
Well, we do have the ability to pause, but let's
Now you tell me.
Yeah.
No, hey, check
Should-
this out. I would love to come back on the show. And if we're able to schedule a date or something like that, send out to your followers and say, hey, we're going to have Sheriff Will Akin on the show. What would you like for us to ask him?
Oh,
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that would be
Great
pretty
idea.
cool. I mean, because we can sit around the round table and we could shoot the shit and stuff like that. But everyone's watching and they're like, oh, man, I really wish they would have asked him this. See what he has to say about this. I'll be like, yeah, I have an opinion.
yeah, that sucks, bro.
Yeah.
Damn, okay. Shit.
Well,
Yeah.
that's a great idea. We will put that out on social media.
Yeah,
for
cool.
Last time or next time you come back. So
And bring the dog.
Oh, man, why don't you guys have an episode with just the dog?
Deal.
Kim
Yeah.
and Lola.
sounds good.
Still probably more interesting talking to Jeremy.
That was
It's a great point. That's a great question, dog.
Oh, so funny with the dad jokes. That's great. Final.
Well, I'm here all week. Make sure you tip your server.
All right. In the interest of your bladder and your wife not killing us, closing thoughts. Not your doctoral dissertation.
No, closing thoughts, man. I think podcasts, what you guys are doing is amazing. Social media is full of information and disinformation, but I think when you legitimize your podcast with people in positions like myself and really get them to talk, that's going to be huge for your audience. And hopefully that'll grow your audience because, like I said, I've watched an episode one. I've skimmed through some other ones. It's just because I'm really super limited on time. Keep doing what you're doing. And, because I think what you're doing is extremely valuable, but also to the audience, the followers, man, be our voice. Like, I can't stress that enough. When somebody starts blasting us or puts us on blast on Facebook or Twitter, we can't say anything, right? Because it's all sunshineable. And once we start crossing that line, I mean, really, are you ever going to change their mind? No. Yeah. But when people come to our rescue, okay, Fires Rescue, KCPD, I mean, when they start coming in and they started saying, hey, you need to go away, you troll, I'll tell you, man, that resonates. It makes other people think, you know what, I'm not going to do that because it's not the department who's going to come after me. It's everyone that lives in that community and that follows them. So closing thoughts is whether we like social media or not, whether we like watching mainstream, media, news or anything like that, the people really need to be more involved. Well, how do I do that? Well, start on social media. Start standing up for the agencies that are doing the job. Start standing up start for yourself. Start standing up and being involved, whether it's knowing more about your sheriff's office, your police department, getting involved in politics. Like, who the hell wants to get involved in politics? We need good people.
Yeah.
Because, anyway, we need good people. Get me on that bandwagon. I'm going to be here for another 30 minutes talking about the importance of knowing your candidates are. Hey, man, I'm available whenever. You guys just let me know if any questions come up from this podcast. You know how to get a hold of me. Ask those questions. I'd be happy to share my thoughts on it, and then you can blast it out to the audience.
Perfect. Sounds good. James?
I'm just grateful. It's been awesome. Just having a good leader on here and just being able to pick his brain with that and just learn all the different facets that go into that. And again, too, not just having a leader in an appointed position, but an elected position and the things that go into that. It's been, I've been just mind blown listening to just everything that goes into it because I didn't know.
Yeah.
And I appreciate the thoughts. I'm just me. Like, I'm just trying to do the best that I can. And when people say, oh, you're a really good leader, I'm just like, I just want to sink in my chair. And I'm like, I don't even want to acknowledge that.
Take the compliment.
I know, right? It's hard, though.
It is.
But thank you. Thank you for having me, man.
So, yes, big thanks. Thank you for coming on the show. Everybody, I hope you enjoyed this episode. It was fantastic, and I hope you all agree with that. And we'll close the show like we do every time. If you are struggling, reach out. There are resources. If you know somebody that's struggling, let them know that there are resources out there. Reach out, talk to them, let them know that you give a shit. Yeah, and thanks again to Sheriff Akin. Appreciate it, Will.
It's my pleasure, guys.
And we'll see you next time.